All set? Okay, I'd like to reconvene the November 22nd, 2011 meeting of the Newport Beach City Council. May we have roll call, please?
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
And do we have a closed session report?
We do not have a closed session report this evening.
All right, if we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Hill and stay standing for the invocation by Reverend Robert Ross of the Newport Universalist Society.
Follow me in saluting our great flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
O Lord of our life, lived in commonality with one another, teach us just a tad of humility for all that we have. We do like to think of ourselves as self-sufficient, strong, ready to rise to all occasions. Put in our hearts the memory of those who as children taught us our language, our history, the rudiments of science on which we have built our knowledge and of our understanding of this world. Give us the humility to realize that we owe so much to so many for what we are able to do and to be. Give us also patience and steadfast love, unwilling to hurry beyond what we are able to know well, to buy beyond what we are able to fund properly, to hope beyond what we are able to gather together for the good and from the goodness of others. Teach us to love, open our minds and hearts, that we may learn yet greater good things that we may bring to our city. And our minds will only be opened if we can love and understand the wisdom of those around us. Lord of all nations, you truly rule here. We don't always observe it, but we know that this is your world, and so this is your city as well, and we are your people. May we truly be thankful this day, this season, for both of these facts. Keep us centered on your kingdom, focused on your work, learning of your truth, and serving those you love. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Well, I'm pleased to say we have three presentations this evening. The first is a proclamation proclaiming November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. Is Vivian D'Agostino here? Vivian, I'll read the proclamation, and then I understand you have a few comments to make. If you'd like to come to the podium, that's fine. Whereas in 2011, an estimated 43,000 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the United States, and 37,000 will die from the disease. And whereas pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers and is the fourth leading cause of cancer death in the United States. And whereas symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is usually too late for an optimistic prognosis, and 74% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year of their diagnosis, while 94% of those patients die within the first 5 years. And whereas of all the racial ethnic groups in the United States, African Americans have the highest incidence rate of pancreatic cancer, between 34% and 70% higher than other groups. And whereas approximately 4,000 deaths will occur in California in 2011, and whereas there is no cure for pancreatic cancer and there have been no significant improvements in survival rates in the last 40 years, and whereas the federal government invests significantly less money in pancreatic cancer research than it does in any of the other leading cancer killers, and pancreatic cancer research constitutes only approximately 2% of the National Cancer Institute's federal research funding, a figure far too low given the severity of the disease, its mortality rate, and how little is known about how to arrest it. And whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network is the first and only national patient advocacy organization that serves the pancreatic cancer community in the city of Newport Beach and nationwide by focusing its efforts on public policy, research funding, patient services, and public awareness and education relating to developing effective treatments and a cure for pancreatic cancer. And whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network and its affiliates in the city of Newport Beach support those patients currently battling pancreatic cancer, as well as to those who have lost their lives to the disease and are committed to nothing less than a cure. And whereas the good health and well-being of the residents of the city of Newport Beach are enhanced as a direct result of increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research into early detection, causes, and effective treatments. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Michael Henn, Mayor of the city of Newport Beach, do hereby proclaim November 2011 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Newport Beach. In witness hereof, I have set hereunto my hand and caused the seal of the city of Newport Beach to be affixed this 22nd day of November 2011.
Thank you.
Would you care to make some comments?
Absolutely. I am very grateful to be here, and I thank the mayor and the council members for proclaiming this month as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, to bring some of those numbers even home. Today, technologically, we are so advanced. My telephone can deposit a check. Medically speaking, as far as pancreatic cancer, we're in 1971. The number of deaths that occur, statistically speaking, have not changed in death-wise for 40 years. So as far as a person receiving a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, medically speaking, their death sentence is the same. The reason why it kind of came to myself and my attention and my family's attention is my sister lost her battle with pancreatic cancer early this year. She left behind a daughter at the time who was 1. She just turned 2. And so often that kind of sparks a lot of the initial battle, but delving further into it, it just became more aware that this is a cancer that, yes, it's the 4th leading cause of cancer death. And unfortunately, it is the least funded cancer within cancers from the National Cancer Institute. It's only receiving 2% of the funding. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that was breast cancer. And before that, it was ovarian cancer. And the only way to really, at this point, to address how to fight it, at this point with breast cancer and ovarian cancer that we've learned, is early detection. So there is no cure, per se, but we know with breast cancer and ovarian cancer, we know early detection is the way to resolve it. So by proclaiming Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, that's the first step forward. One of the ways that we've done some awareness is by making the Pancreatic Walk, which we had over 600 participants earlier this month, which was great. We had it in Irvine. Hopefully next year I'll be standing here before you again, maybe a little bit earlier in the month so that I can get all of you to come to our walk, because I did do a Zumba warm-up, which we had about 200 people do. But out of that 600 people that participated in the walk, we asked the survivors who were of pancreatic cancer to step forward. Out of those 600 people, we had 5. And out of those 5 people that survived past 5 years, we had 2. So that was pretty devastating, and that really brought it home how devastating this cancer is. So I certainly do. I don't want to take up more of your time. I do appreciate you proclaiming this month as pancreatic cancer. It's our first step forward. I do want to bring to your attention, though, there is a website that, technologically speaking, we can bring forward. It is knowitfightitendit.org. And that's one way that people can do something about this particular cancer and make a difference. So thank you very much.
If you'd like, I'll come down and...
I would love that.
All right, our next presentation has to do with Operation Christmas, and I understand Brad White, the National Chairman and Chief Elf for Yellow Ribbon America and Operation Christmas, is present tonight to discuss that. The City Clerk's Office will be accepting new and unwrapped toys for children of our troops, new or used, DVDs for the troops, and gift cards and monetary donations for the families through Operation Christmas until noon on Friday, December 23rd. Chief Elf?
That's right. It's my pleasure to do so. I absolutely love Christmas, and it's an honor to do so, especially for our nation's military and their families. I'm here tonight for two purposes. One is to help promote our Christmas drive that we've partnered with the City of Newport Beach since 2005. And I'm not sure, but Council Member Rosansky, weren't you Santa Claus one year? And you drove in a Humvee?
Yes, I was. I actually stood in for Don Webb, who was sick, and I borrowed his Santa
That's
costume.
right.
Yes, I did.
That's right. And
Ho, ho, ho.
thank you for your support. And not only that, because we were not able to get support from the city of Fullerton, city council members from Newport Beach went down to the city of Fullerton's California Army National Guard and presented toys and gifts to their children while their infantry companies were deployed in Iraq. And I want to commend the city for that, because it's hugely important to be able to support. But to get to play Santa Claus again on two different occasions, we greatly appreciate your support and efforts in that regard. Yellow Ribbon America, to just give you a little bit of background information, is a community outreach campaign that was started here in Orange County by myself at the direction of military officers who were also Vietnam War veterans. Looking at that generation, we all remember that there was no support for our returning service members. As a matter of fact, that they were looked on with disdain and treated with disrespect, and basically no support for the families. One thing that's good about America is we usually try to correct our wrongs. They called this the Long War. So in our hindsight, we were thinking, why don't we do something different, since it looks like we're going to have two wars, an ongoing war, and this is back in 2003. And so we said, why don't we do an effort that helps the active duty Guard and Reserve by encouraging communities to support their local active duty Guard and Reserve. Here in Orange County, we have about 10,000 military personnel, if you count Joint Forces Training Base Los Alamitos. The Air National Guard left Costa Mesa, but the Army Reserve is there. Master Sergeant Juan Romero, who is representing the United States Army Reserve and also the Armed Forces Reserve Center in Irvine. They have close to 1,000 soldiers there with 4 different companies. He represents the battalion. Most folks don't realize the Marines may have left Tustin and also El Toro in '94, but we still have even Marines in Los Alamitos. We have Navy Seabees. We have Navy that's at Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station. And we have National Guard in 3 other locations and the Army Reserve in 3 other locations. Our state being the largest, we have more people serving in the military than any other state, a total of 223 military installations. Unfortunately, while many Americans have supported our military during these wars over the last 10 years, we have had a Katrina effect. Our philosophy has always been, if you take care of the people in your own backyard, you won't have as many of these issues or problems. The challenges early on were we kind of had a brush of knee-jerk patriotism in the beginning, and then we had confusion because we were told that a war was over when it wasn't. And this is not being political, it's just a fact, and it was hard to keep that support going. I'm here because there's something that the people of Newport Beach and the people of Orange County and the rest of the state should know. There is one city that has had a constant that has not only supported Marines, it has supported soldiers, airmen, Coast Guard members, it has supported Navy personnel and families consistently. You have been chosen by us and those in the military, and we are here to present an award on behalf of the people of California as Newport Beach being the most supportive city in all of California and an example to all. The heart of Newport Beach, the city people that work here, the people that live here are an example. On countless occasions, and not just through our efforts with our Christmas drive that we do statewide, but with Marines, with anybody that is in need, you guys are always there. And I'm here to present, and we'd like to do this again on a more formal note, but since we're kicking off the Christmas drive, a resolution from the state of California that, if I can just take a couple of quick minutes to read, if that's okay.
Certainly.
This is to be presented to the City of Newport Beach, whereas the City of Newport Beach has been selected as the recipient of the 2011 Outstanding Support of California's Military Members and Family Award. In a recognition thereof, city officials and residents are deserving of heartiest congratulations and commendations. And whereas since December of 2005, the city of Newport Beach has extensively to the people of the state of California through its outstanding community leadership and participating in Yellow Ribbon America's Operation Christmas for Our Troops and Families drive. And whereas the city built on the hard work and determination of the population justly proud of its community, the city of Newport Beach has greatly assisted in helping to collect over 500,000 donated items such as toys, bicycles, gift cards, DVDs, clothes, calling cards, Christmas cards, and food and care packages for America's military members and their loved ones deployed overseas, and food for various unit Christmas parties, as well as financial donations for military families in need and for many military family readiness programs in the California National Guard, Reserve, and active duty components. And whereas Operation Christmas for Our Troops and Families is sponsored by Yellow Ribbon America, the National Guards Association of California, with support and sponsorship from the California State Legislature, whereas renowned as a desirable community in which to live, the city of Newport Beach has continuously supported local military members overseas and their families here at home during wartime since 2001. And it has worked tirelessly to welcome home and give assistance to returning military members, including those severely injured and their families. And whereas the city of Newport Beach is a community that considers the lessons of the past, understands the current and future realities, and shares a sense of culture belonging now, therefore be it resolved by the Assembly of the State of California that we take great pleasure commending the city of Newport Beach for its exemplary record of service to those individuals serving our nation in the armed forces and their families, and applauds those individuals fortunate enough to call Newport Beach home, and extends best wishes and continued growth and prosperity in many years to come. So on behalf of the people of California, we'd like to present this, and thank you so much for all that you've done.
Thank you. I'll come down and
You got it.
Well, that was a pleasant surprise. Thank you all. Okay, the next presentation is the presentation of cultural arts grant checks by the City Council and the City Arts Commission. Robin?
Good evening. Mayor Henn and council members, I'm Robin Grant, the chair of the Newport Beach Arts Commission. On behalf of the Commission, I am here to present the annual report for 2010-2011 and make the award of the grant checks. The Arts Commission is extremely grateful for the Council's very generous support of the arts, which makes possible abundant, high-quality, free arts programs for the residents of and visitors to the City of Newport Beach. The Arts Commission continues to experience record attendance at all programs, including artists and visitors to the annual Juried Art Show held in the spring at the Central Library, 500 to 2,000 people at each summer concert in the park, and record attendance with close to 1,000 people each night at the 10th annual Shakespeare by the Sea, including performances of King Lear and Much Ado About Nothing. We also continue to have success with our newest venture, museum tours, with sold-out events to the Huntington Library Art Collections and Botanical Gardens and the Norton Simon Museum, and we highly anticipate the next tour to the Autry National Center in February. The Commission is also working on opportunities for art installations throughout the city, including collaborating with the Orange County Museum of Art, regarding securing outdoor sculpture for the new Civic Center, and negotiating with the Irvine Company and others regarding their proposed donation of the Flyers sculpture, which was originally installed in Newport Center. The Commission also continues its lecture series to heighten community awareness about art in public places. In February, Peter Walker of Peter Walker Partners, landscape architect for the Civic Center, came from Berkeley, California to present landscape and art in, of, and for to a capacity audience. In 2011, the city was the recipient of a donation of paintings by longtime Newport Beach resident Elizabeth Wiltrout Longridge. The paintings were accepted by the council, along with a very generous request of $50,000, which is reserved for arts in the city of Newport Beach. The Commission is currently working to recondition 9 of the paintings for eventual public display and anticipates making a recommendation to the council for use of the bequest monies. We would like to express our appreciation for the very capable and dependable staff support provided during the year by Jana Barbier, the Cultural Arts Coordinator, and Cynthia Cowell, the Library Services Director. Again, thank you to the council for their unwavering support of the arts. And now we can present the 2010-2011 Cultural Arts Grants. City Council Policy I-10 recognizes the importance of promoting culture and arts within the city. The Arts Commission reviews requests for support and recommends funding to the City Council. We are extremely fortunate to have so many organizations working to provide quality arts opportunities to the residents of our city. Thank you all for your proposals. I would request that Mayor Henn assist me in making the awards. If all the recipients could come to the podium when their organization is called and remain for a group picture after the last award. Okay. Baroque Music Festival. Congratulations. If you want to just wait, we can take a picture all together. Yeah, that'd be great. Explore Ocean Newport Harbor Nautical Museum. Festival Ballet Theater. Keith Glassman Dance and Performance. Newport Beach Film Festival. Newport Mesa YMCA. South Coast Repertory Theater. And Southland Opera. Thank you all and good luck.
Thanks to Robin and the entire Arts Commission for all the hard work they do on behalf of our city and its cultural advancement during the year. Okay, with that, we'll move on to notice to the public.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for city council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
Okay, Councilmember Hill.
Nothing this evening.
And Councilmember Rosansky?
Yes, it's come to my attention at our study session this afternoon that we have a new policy with regard to public comments at committee and commission meetings, I gather. Is it commissions as well, or just a committee?
We designed the form agenda for both commissions.
Okay,
and
for
committees.
both commissions and committees that is different than the practices that were followed in the past, I guess, and in an attempt to standardize them, but I think it's something that the council should at least have a report on and see if that jives with the direction we want to head with regard to public comment. So if we could bring that back maybe sometime in January or something.
I'd be happy to bring that back.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
The Corona Del Mar Christmas Walk was coming up on December 4th from 11 to 3, or 11 to 4, I guess it is. It's always a fun time. I hope everybody comes out. And there's an opportunity to meet CERT volunteers and learn about CERT training. They'll have a little booth there. So if you're interested in that and want to know more about it, that's your opportunity to do that while you're walking through and enjoying all the stores that have all their cookies out and everything else. So there'll be a petting zoo, I think, usually, in the jumping house for the kids, bands, everything. Be sure and come. And then also, on a little different note, we've received a request from San Clemente, and I don't know whether it's something I'd like to see it on the agenda, a letter of support. Certainly, they're in much more dire circumstances if something does go wrong at San Onofre, but we would be affected also, and I think we want to be sure that everything's being done to ensure the safety of that. And since they've asked us for our letter of support, I'd like to see us do that, so if we could have it on a future agenda.
We could do that, or I was just going to send the letter of support. Okay, I'll copy you. That was at the mayor's prompting.
Okay, Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, there's lots of ways to help others during the holiday season. And earlier today at lunch, I was over at the Second Harvest Food Bank, and that is at the Great Park in Irvine. And when you donate to Second Harvest, you take a powerful stand in the fight against hunger. They serve over 240,000 hungry people in Orange County over the course of the year. And one of their messages today is that hunger is not just a seasonal issue, and so the food bank is there year-round. And if you contribute, 94 cents of every dollar goes directly to the programs. And the majority of the food is donated by restaurants, grocery stores, food manufacturers, growers, and packers. And so it's just a wonderful event. There's over 9,000 volunteers connected to Second Harvest Food Bank. The lunch today was provided by Antonio's, and Antonio is a Newport Beach resident. And among those honored was South Coast Plaza and the, what's that? Antonello. Oh, Antonello. What did I say, Antonio? Oh, thank you. Cagnolia. Okay, thank you. And among those also honored was South Coast Plaza and the Segerstrom family, and the Segerstroms live here in Corona Del Mar and Newport Beach. And among the honored speakers, the individuals honored was Tom Fuentes, and he is former chairman of the Republican Party in Orange County. And he just gave a wonderful speech about the role of the Archdiocese of Orange in the food bank. And then a couple Sundays ago, I went to the opening of the new airport, the new Terminal C at the airport. And that was a project that was delivered on time and on budget. It was a $650 million budget, and they brought it in at $543 million. Wasn't just because of the frugal fellow that managed the project, but also because of reduced construction costs and labor. And that particular project generated 6,600 jobs over the course of its construction. And a lot of times when we think about airports, we think about how it looks on the outside. But with this particular airport, the internal systems are going to provide a lot of convenience for travelers. There's going to be new display monitors, so no matter what terminal you go into, you'll be able to see information. And then you'll also be able to check in at any kiosk within any of the terminals. And they're going to have Wi-Fi throughout the airport. And additionally, there will be valet parking. So they've gone to every measure they can to provide for conveniences. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, although I didn't mention the airline, they are having AirTran is the airline that will be providing service to Mexico. And basically, Southwest purchased AirTran, but it takes a couple years for the companies to integrate. So for now, AirTran will be operating as a subsidiary, flying the Southwest flag. There will also be a customs facility in the new airport. So it was a well-attended event by various individuals in the county, and it was good to see about Terminal C. And of course, as we head into our settlement negotiations, we're also keeping an eye on what we would like to see in terms of passenger levels. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Curry.
Thank you. On Thursday last week, I was privileged, along with our Assistant City Manager, to participate at the Orange County Business Council Turning Red Tape into Red Carpet Awards. Newport Beach was given an award in the Business Retention and Development category. More than 35 cities submitted applications for this award, so we were very fortunate to win. And I think it speaks volumes about the efforts that our staff has made over the past few months to improve customer service and the experience people have in doing business with the City of Newport Beach. So I just want to congratulate the staff and say, job well done. This is a real testament to the progress that we're making in improving the customer experience in dealing with the City of Newport Beach. On the 12th, I was fortunate to be present at the opening of the Tamarind of London restaurant in Newport Coast. This is the only North American outpost of what is one of the most fabled Indian restaurants in London. And so I encourage you, if you're an Indian food fan, to get up to Newport Coast and check it out. They've done a great job with the old Sage spot, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. And then finally, on the 16th, I participated with the League of Cities at the annual legislative briefing along with representatives of other cities from Orange County. I won't go into all the details. Suffice it to say the state continues to be in a very severe budget situation, and I think all cities are in their sights in an attempt to redirect funds, and so we need to be very vigilant in how we protect our city and our good credit and our strong financial position against these potential raids or potential reorganizations or restructurings as they're proposed coming up.
Thank you. Councilmember Selledge.
No announcements this evening.
All right, I have a few announcements. I guess the first thing I'd like to do is wish all of the residents of Newport Beach a happy Thanksgiving. It's a great time to enjoy family and friends, and to remember that we do have so much to be thankful for here living in the greatest city in the greatest country of the world. So to all, I hope you can truly enjoy the holiday. With regard to meetings coming up, there will be a special council meeting on November the 29th. Is that correct, Dave? And
Yes, sir.
And I don't know that we've set the exact time for that meeting yet, have we?
We're just discussing trying to shoot at 6 o'clock closed session and a 7 o'clock regular session.
Okay. On November the 29th, we have extra business to do, and so there will be an agenda distributed in advance for that meeting. And then as an agenda item on this evening's calendar, I want to make sure everyone is aware that for the December 13th regular City Council meeting, that meeting will begin at 5 p.m. In addition to that, the Balboa Village Business Improvement District will be sponsoring a tree lighting ceremony, rivaling, I'm told, what goes on in Fashion Island. And that will be at 6 p.m. on Saturday, December the 3rd in Balboa Village. Hope to see a lot of folks there. And then there is a meeting of the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee that will be held at 4 p.m. on December the 8th in the council chambers. And then lastly, I was pleased to be able to attend, along with other council members and staff, the inaugural meeting of the Center for Public Policy of Concordia University, an initiative organized and put forward by Council Member Curry. And it was a very worthwhile presentation on the state of Orange County. And I look forward to attending additional meetings of the Center for Public Policy. It looks like it's going to get off to a great start. So congratulations to you, Keith. Okay, with that, Let's move on to consent calendar.
All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 20, are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. The council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Councilmember Daigle.
None.
Councilmember Curry.
I'd like to record a recusal on item 12. I have a financial interest in one of the firms being recommended.
Councilmember Selich.
No items.
Councilmember Hill.
No items.
Councilmember Rosansky.
None, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Nothing?
Okay, I would like to pull item number 18 on the Planning Commission appointment. Do we have any members of the public that would wish to pull a consent calendar item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of items 1 through 20, with the exception of 18, and a recusal by Mr. Curry on number 12.
Second.
And I'd like to note the slight amendment to the minutes that were presented to
With
also.
the amendment.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Prior to reading the votes, I will read the ordinance and resolution titles. For item number 3, ordinance number 2011-25 for adoption, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving Planned Community Development Plan Amendment number PD 2010-007 to change the zoning designation from Restaurant Site 1 to General Commercial Site 8 for property located at 4221 Dolphin Striker. Item 4 is resolution number 2011-103, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach concerning the Measure M2 expenditure report for the City of Newport Beach. Item 5, resolution number 2011-104, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving the submittal of various project applications to the Orange County Transportation Authority for funding under the Comprehensive Transportation Funding Program. Item 6, resolution number 2011-105, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach supporting an application by the City of Costa Mesa for the Orange County Transportation Authority's Measure M2 Traffic Signal Synchronization Program funding for the Placentia Avenue and 17th Street Corridor Synchronization Projects. And item 7, resolution number 2011-106, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach supporting an application by the City of Irvine for the Orange County Transportation Authority's Measure M2 Traffic Signal Synchronization Program funding for the Ford Road, Bonita Canyon Drive, Culver Drive, and University Drive, Jeffrey Road Corridor synchronization projects. And with that, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I pulled item number 18 for purposes of streamlining, I hope, the appointment process for that Planning Commission vacancy, which came up quite unexpectedly with the resignation of Chairman Charles Unsworth. As it turns out, that resignation and this opening comes at a particularly critical time as it relates to the presentation of the Banning Ranch Environmental Impact Report, which is a very large and complex project with a very large report, which is also complex. And it's particularly important that we move forward immediately, in my view, to name that replacement. The comment period for the Environmental Impact Report is already closed. The Planning Commission will be seeing this item. I believe the intent is in January. And so it's particularly important that we fill this vacancy quickly. It's my view that we do have a number of qualified candidates with applications already on file. And so, and in particular, perhaps some folks, one, for example, I know Larry Tucker, who have special knowledge and expertise and understanding of the issue that could be brought to bear right away on the Banning Ranch issue. So in substitution of the item 18 as it presently stands, I would like to move that we ask staff to bring back for the November 29th meeting and items that would include waiver of council policy A2, and to provide for the interim appointment of a replacement for Chuck Unsworth, fundamentally with the benefit of applications on file, although to the extent any new applications would be made available, that's fine. My expectation is that nominations can be made and voted upon at the meeting of the 29th. So that would be the move that I would make. Do we have a second?
Oh, well, I just have a question.
I'll second it.
Yes.
What sort of notice, public notice? So you're saying we wouldn't have any public notice? This is the public notice?
This is, and we could get the word out at least on our website and Facebook and to the media tomorrow about this, to get it in.
And we would contact the people that have
applications in already.
All right.
And any council member can make a nomination of anyone they choose on the 29th. We just want to move forward rapidly here in view of the weighty issues associated with Banning Ranch. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Sellers, do you have any? All right. Do we have public comment on this item? Anyone wishing to make a public comment? Okay. Seeing none. Excuse me, Jim, were you intending to
So
make a
what
comment?
exactly is the motion, if you can clarify?
In substitution of the item that's on the agenda tonight, to ask staff to come back with an item to waive council policy A2 and to provide for the nomination and voting at the meeting on the 29th for an interim replacement to the vacancy created by Charles Unsworth, interim in the sense of serving until his term would expire, which is in June of next year.
Okay. And it sounded that there was a dimension that, what about the applications on file, or who are eligible appointee, who is eligible to be appointed? And is that consistent with our?
Anyone with an application on file is eligible to be nominated.
But we wouldn't be doing it on the 29th. We'd just be looking at this change of policy on the 29th.
That's the thought. You'd be able to change the policy and appoint on the 29th. So we'd give you an update midday or before the meeting on the 29th and provide you with those applications.
Okay. I don't think that there's that much urgency in it myself.
Okay. Further comment? Okay. Jim?
Yeah. My name is Jim Mosier, and I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Gardner. I don't fully understand the urgency of this matter. My understanding is that there is quite a large volume of comments that were posted with regard to the environmental impact report, so it may be unrealistic that it will be coming back to the Planning Commission in January, and even if it does, I'm not aware of it being anything more than a one-session item that they would be, as massive as it is. I don't know that something they would be looking at repeated meetings, and I'm somewhat confused by the urgency of this and not going through the normal procedure. And also unclear when you said an interim appointment, if you mean just until Chair Unsworth's term ends in
Yes, I just
July?
clarified that, yes.
Yes, okay.
Are there any other comments on this item?
Well, I do have a question on the interim aspect of it, though, because I think as Commissioner Unsworth made the point, one of the reasons that he was stepping down was because of a concern that he wouldn't have continuity. He wasn't going to seek a second term. So I don't know if that can be avoided, though.
Yes.
I'll just add that I agree with Nancy. I don't see the urgency of that. I'd rather put the meeting off a week or two. With regard to the EIR, I mean, this thing's been dragging on for 3 or 4 years now. Another meeting is not going to matter, but I think we do have a procedure for allowing the public to participate and to find out about open positions, and I don't really like, I just don't like the way that's being handled within a week. It's not fair to the public.
Further comment? Okay, please vote.
With Council Members Rosansky, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, and Councilmember Daigle voting no, the motion carries.
Okay. On to public comments.
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Is there anyone who wishes to make a public comment?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members, and thank you for the warm holiday wishes, and I share your appreciation for our good fortune of living in Newport Beach. I know that we lit the Christmas tree at Fashion Island last weekend, and spectacular event ringing in the season of benevolence, and I was thinking about a hypothetical situation. I was thinking perhaps if I was standing in the crowd at Fashion Island watching the tree be illuminated, and the person next to me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, but you're standing on my foot," or "You're standing on my child's foot and it hurts. Would you please remove it?" I have a decision at that time. I can make a choice whether to comply and say, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was causing you harm," and I will step aside. Or I could have said, "No, I'm sorry, but I'm comfortable here and I'm not going to move my foot and I'm going to stand right here." We live in a society that is hopefully compassionate, and that most people do not intentionally want to cause harm to others. And when it's called to our attention that we are causing harm to others inadvertently, we take steps to correct it. The pet stores in Newport Beach it's been called to their attention that their practices of selling dogs who originate in the horrors of puppy mills, not even in California, it's been brought to their attention that this is causing harm. To this point, they have chosen to not alter their practices. A few years ago, California passed Prop 2, which was an animal welfare ordinance that bans for farmed animals. It bans battery cages for egg-laying hens, gestation crates for pigs, and veal crates for calves. And next year, the foie gras ban is going into effect because of its inherent cruelty in its production. That's just for animals that are going to be ultimately killed for food. Those are slaughtered animals. What about our companion animals? People are bringing dogs and cats into their homes to be members of their families, and they're coming from these horrific, cruel conditions. And I'd like to think that there is a trend, which we are seeing, where people are less inclined to promote those kinds of cruel conditions. They want to adopt their animals rather than support unethical businesses. And we have asked the pet stores in Newport Beach to comply with this request. We're not asking them to get out of town. We're just asking them to alter their practices in such a way that they do not cause harm to others.
Thank you.
I hope you'll consider that in the future. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other comments?
Honored Mayor and council members, name is Earl Halliburton. I'll be speaking briefly on support of I Heart Puppies. Again, sorry to take your time up this evening. We thought that the other side, so to speak, of the cause wasn't going to address you this evening, but we feel, again, compelled to counter. The owner of I Heart Puppies is Susan Bradford, and she's one of the nicest people I've met and have dealt with business-wise. She comes from a Oregon and Utah background. She grew up in a rural area. She's been a member of 4-H throughout most of her grade school and high school years. Very compassionate, loves animals, and that's been most of her life, as you know, when you grew up in a rural area. I can't think of words that can express anything other than I've never met someone who's so kind to animals, who has gone out of her way to support actually the cause that you've heard from for the last few weeks, those who stand against puppy mills. She also takes a very firm stand against puppy mills. The people that she purchases animals from, she's known for a number of years. Some of them are close friends of hers and associates. At a future council meeting, she'd be willing to have a couple of her close associates who are in the breeding business to actually address the council, come visit Newport Beach and talk with you. She continuously has asked those who protest against her, as well as you all, please feel free to come by, visit the store, see the animals, look at the research and the history of each animal, where they're from, and the quality and care that goes into the presentation and the style and way she operates her business. She also has helped some of the local shelters. If people can't afford or don't want an AKC registered championship animal, that she has been kind enough to let some of the shelters bring animals in and have them there as well. Also, for those who happen to be more in the feline character, there are cats which are from a shelter that she also has available in her store. I've also seen her shelter in her own home a couple of dogs from friends of hers who, again, she's met. They were former Newport Beach residents, and she's gone out of her way to find homes for those animals as well. Again, I'm sorry that her character and her store has been beset by those who seem to be unwilling to come in, visit her, get to know her as an individual. And again, thank you very much for your time this evening. We will, again, welcome you to please visit the store.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good evening. My name is Ryan Sage. I'm here as a concerned citizen. There is currently an event being promoted on December 31st and the 1st of January 2012 as a 3,000-person rave event outdoor on the property of 4647, otherwise known as 10 Nightclub, formerly known as 888, formerly known as Red Nightclub. My understanding is that the rave event is being advertised and is selling tickets featuring DJs that were part of an ill-fated event that took place in the summer of 2010 at the Los Angeles Coliseum that resulted in these type of events being not allowed anymore on any state or city-owned properties, including the Coliseum and also the LA Sports Arena. It's also my understanding that the conditional use permit for this venue specifically forbids this type of event from happening in the parking lot in front of the nightclub, and that the parking lot must only be used for parking cars. In some, the issues seem to be parking displacement, direct violation of the nightclub CUP, strain on emergency services, and most importantly, we're under the assumption that no permitting has been happening for this event in the case that it is a special event. So I wanted to bring that to public attention and also see who I might speak with regarding...
Right. I would just add that it has been brought to my attention, and I brought it up with the city manager and the police chief. Maybe the city manager has a response.
Yes, indeed, Councilmember Daigle did bring it to the chief's attention and to my own. We have been in contact, believe we've been in contact with the promoter. They don't have a permit to do anything outdoors, including the proposed tent. We wouldn't grant that permit, especially on that night, so we'll be working on it.
Great, thanks for your time.
Okay, do we have any other comment? Seeing none. We'll move on to oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, our Airport Land Use Commission heard two items. Both were Newport Beach items, our housing element, and the commission needs to determine a finding of a consistency with the Airport Land Use Environments Plan. and we passed the test, and appreciate our staff there for both items. And then secondly was the access plan and the additional square footage at Dolphin Striker Way. So there was no objections from any of the commissioners on either of those issues. But as part of our packets, the airport staff does provide us with news articles of the region, and I know of no governmental agency that probably gets more complaints than the FAA. I mean, it's just full of complaints from Palos Verdes, Long Beach, and so on. So thank you.
Councilmember Curry?
No items?
Councilmember Selich?
On November the 9th, the West Newport Citizens Advisory Panel met, and the panel approved the landscape concept for Balboa Boulevard and the Superior, Balboa Boulevard, and Coast Highway intersection. At the next meeting, the CAP will be looking at the plan for Coast Highway from the Santa Ana River to Newport Boulevard, and then also Superior Avenue from the existing landscaping at the top of the hill down to Coast Highway. And one of the things I might note is that in both of those plans, the landscape architect has come up with what I think are some real creative solutions to the K-rail that exists coming down Superior Avenue, as well as the K-rail that's on Coast Highway coming across from the Santa Ana River. And I think that the Citizen Advisory Panel, as well as the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee and the City Council, will be quite pleased with the design solution they came up with.
Very good. Councilmember Hill?
Yes, excuse me. On November 16th, the Citizen Advisory Panel for Corona Del Mar met and reached agreement on the layout for the entrance road pattern at MacArthur and PCH into Corona Del Mar, including the traffic lanes and the curb and the median between Avocado and Carnation on PCH. And the committee will now be transitioning to the landscape design concept stage. And our next meeting, we'll begin to look at various concepts of landscaping. And that next meeting is, while she's looking that up, I'll also say that on a different topic, on November 17th, Councilperson Daigle and myself had the opportunity of participating with the Airport Working Group and Airfare in a town hall meeting for the Dover Residents Association. And East Bluff, I'm sorry, right town, wrong church. And it was a very positive meeting. I think that the three groups came together very strongly to deliver a message that our goal is to extend the settlement agreement that expires otherwise in 2015 to protect the quality of life for Newport Beach. And I think it was a very positive meeting, and it was a very positive outcome, and we look forward to taking that program on the road for anybody that's interested in hearing from us. So that's the town hall meeting. And the date of the CAP meeting will be December 21st, and will be held at Oasis at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the next Corona Del Mar Citizens Advisory Panel. Thank you.
Councilmember Rosansky?
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner?
Yes, both the Harbor Commission and the Tidelands Management Committee had the presentation on a proposed new public dock and expansion of the Balboa Marina, and both groups were very excited about the prospect, so we will be taking that to community groups. Would be a partnership between the Irvine Company and the city that would provide additional public docking near the Bay Pier. So, Bay Bridge, yes, Bay Bridge. Very well accepted by both groups.
Very good. Well, if you've gotten the impression that the Citizens Advisory Panels working on revitalization are moving along smartly, you would be correct. We're making very good progress in all counts. The overarching committee that sort of oversees the activities of these Citizens Advisory Panels is the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, on which Councilmember Hill and Councilmember Selich and I sit. That committee had a meeting on November the 10th at 4 p.m., wherein it reviewed the status of the various Citizens Advisory Panel work, including brief reports on West Newport and Balboa Village and Corona Del Mar entry, and a more extensive report on the Santa Ana Heights Bristol Street landscape design Citizens Advisory Panel. We had a good discussion. Staff was asked to come back with a little bit more information and clarification on those recommendations, and I'm hopeful at the next meeting of the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee we'll be able to finalize and mature to City Council a recommendation regarding that design work. And then there was a presentation on the design guidelines for Lido Village and City Hall. I did not attend that portion of the meeting. Did you want to make any comment on that, Councilmember Hill?
During the presentation, the Citizens Advisory Panel on Lido Village presented the, I think what we called the 90% or 85% or 92%, 99% guideline. They need the final nits looked at, and that was going to happen, and then it will next come before the City Council for adoption. So great progress has been made. The Citizens Advisory Panel held several meetings. They were well attended by the public, and then held a community meeting well attended by Lido Island residents, and received some significant input, including some very good input from the Planning Commission, and all of that was brought together at the Neighborhood Revitalization meeting. So we're very pleased with the progress they've made.
Very good, thank you. And then there was a meeting of the Balboa Village Citizens Advisory Panel on November the 15th, and at that meeting we had a very interesting presentation by Gary Sherwin of the brand promise for Newport Beach that Visit Newport Beach operates under, and had a good discussion of how that might relate to the Balboa Village cap, and I'm sure there will be some follow-up work on that idea. In addition to that, there was a presentation and discussion of public safety issues in the Balboa Village, as well as our first discussion of parking governance and management in the Balboa Village area. So a good meeting, moving along, and I think we're going to be getting into some very meaty topics as we continue our meetings there for the Balboa Village cap. And then lastly, the meeting of the Tidelands Committee, which Mayor Pro Tem Gardner referenced a moment ago, that occurred on November the 16th over at Oasis at 4 p.m. We had a discussion on the proposed Balboa Marina Public Dock, which was extremely well received by the Tidelands Committee. We also had a follow-up discussion of the Balboa Island bulkhead issue. This relates to the concern about the sea level rise and what that might mean for Balboa Island and actually the rest of the bay and even the peninsula over time. And it seems like every time we talk about this issue, the complexity and the size and the cost
We add more zeros.
goes up and up and up. We're now up to 9 figures, I guess, somewhere in that range to deal with all of this. If in fact we get 9 figures would be the hundreds of millions of dollars. If in fact we get the sea level rise that some people think we might. So it certainly is not too soon to be working on that, and our desire is to come back with some initial recommendations as soon as we can about how to begin to deal with this problem, which certainly is a generational issue. And then lastly, we had a very good discussion about expanded dredging of the lower bay. We see a project totaling about $7.2 million that could result in essentially navigability of our bay by relatively deep keel boats pretty much throughout the well-traveled areas of the lower bay. This is an interim step in anticipation of the $25 million it would take to dredge the entire bay. But this interim step would go a long, long ways toward improving navigability, as well as have an important environmental benefit by enabling us to clean up probably 80 or 90% or more of the remaining sediment in the bay that's not suitable for open ocean disposal. So we will be moving forward as rapidly as possible to tee up that project It will require participation of private donations along the way, and we're working hard on organizing that effort as well. This would be a combination of federal funding, city funding, which is yet to be proposed and voted on, and private funding. So a true public-private partnership that we think will have major benefit to our bay. And so with that, we will move on to public hearings.
We have 3 public hearings for you tonight. The first one is about the housing element, and that will be presented by our Community Development Department staff.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we are very pleased tonight to be bringing to the council a draft housing element that has received certification from the State Department of Housing and Community Development and has also received unanimous support from your Planning Commission. I think that all of you are well aware that the general plan is a mandated document that the City Council is required to have, and it has 7 elements included in that document that are prescribed by state law. Of all the 7 elements, the housing element is the strictest in terms of state compliance and review and oversight. And so we have been working on the housing element since 2008, and the staff here has worked very hard and have gone back and forth with the State Department in ensuring that all of their concerns have been met and still work within the framework of what the City of Newport Beach is. So with that, I will turn it over to Jaime and Melinda to give you an overview of the housing element.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'd just like to start off by explaining what the housing element is, and as Kimberly Brandt indicated, it's the one element of the general plan that's required to be reviewed by a state agency, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development, and it's also subject to very specific state law requirements. Excuse me. Thanks. In summary, the housing element sets forth the city's 7-year plan to meet the existing and projected housing needs for the city for all economic segments of the community. It's not just about affordable housing, but it addresses all income levels and housing types. It also identifies constraints to the development and maintenance of housing in the city, and also looks at strategies to address those constraints. And lastly, it establishes certain goals, policies, and programs to address the city's housing needs. We have the preparation of this housing element began in 2008. We've had a total of 3 public workshops where we invited members of the community, housing advocates, affordable housing developers, and market rate developers to provide input and comments in the development of the initial draft of the housing element. We also held a Planning Commission and City Council meeting in the summer of 2008 to provide an opportunity to review the initial draft of the housing element that was submitted to HCD. Since then, staff has worked on a total of 4 versions of the housing element to address the numerous comments we've received from HCD. And finally, in September of 2011, HCD found that the current draft of the housing element meets all statutory requirements of state housing element law. The housing element itself is broken up into several components. The first major component of the housing element addresses the city's existing housing needs and includes detailed analysis and statistics analyzing population and employment trends in the city. Includes an analysis of household characteristics and overall housing stock conditions in the city. It also includes an analysis of the city's affordable housing units that are at risk of converting to market rate within the planning period and strategies to try to preserve those units. It also includes detailed analysis on special housing needs groups such as the elderly, disabled, female-headed households, large families, farm workers, and homeless persons and families. The next major component in the housing element is a discussion on how to address the city's projected housing needs. Our projected housing needs are mainly based upon the city's Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is RHNA for short. This is created by the Southern California Association of Governments, who's tasked with calculating the projected needs for that region, and then they allocate the city a certain percentage of those units. I do want to point out that our Regional Housing Needs Assessment is not a construction requirement. It's more of a goal, and the city needs to show a good faith effort in assisting in the development of housing and meeting that goal, and showing we have adequate sites that can accommodate our projected housing needs. Something that's important that I do want to point out is that because the city lost certification of our housing element in the previous planning period, we are required to carry over 62, or we're required to carry over our unmet need from the previous planning period, which equated to 62 very low income units and 83 moderate income units, which was added to the current planning period's total housing need. And as you can see from the table, for this planning period, we have a total need of 1,914 units, 770 of which are for lower income households. Within the housing element, there's a site analysis and inventory, which illustrates how the city can accommodate the city's projected housing needs for the planning period. The inventory is organized by the key opportunity areas that were created as part of the 2006 General Plan update. So just to clarify, the housing element doesn't create any new housing opportunity areas. It merely clarifies and illustrates how sites within the city can accommodate the city's projected housing needs, consistent with the areas identified in the 2006 General Plan. It's a very specific and detailed inventory and analysis. State law requires a parcel-specific analysis, which includes zoning, use of the property, potential and realistic development capacity and densities. It includes environmental issues on those parcels and whether or not there's sufficient public service to meet those developments. This is just a couple of exhibits from the inventory that shows the detailed analysis that went into the inventory. In addition to showing we have adequate sites to meet our total RHNA, we are also required to show we have adequate sites to accommodate our lower income housing needs, which again was 770 dwelling units. State law is specific, and it states that in order for a site to be deemed adequate to meet our lower income need, they establish a default density, which is 30 dwelling units per acre minimum. One of the few areas in the city where we have allowed densities is in the John Wayne Airport area, which we've identified as one of our greatest housing opportunity sites in the city. The John Wayne Airport area requires a minimum density of 30 dwelling units per acre and allows for a maximum of 50 dwelling units per acre. However, HCD has identified a number of constraints regarding the airport area and its ability to accommodate lower income housing. One of those is with regard to General Plan Policy LU 6.15.6, which states that residential development in the airport area is permitted so long as they compile a minimum of 10 acres in order to create a residential village which provides amenities for future residents and to be centered around a park. However, HCD determined that 10-acre lot consolidation requirement is a constraint, and therefore the housing element does include a program that states that the city would establish a waiver or an exception to the minimum 10-acre site requirement. However, recognizing that may lead to potential land use compatibility issues, the waiver exception will include provisions for adequate amenities, design considerations for the future integration into a larger residential village, and a requirement to ensure collaboration with future developers in the area. The other constraint identified by HCD was the fact that the sites remain zoned for commercial and industrial land uses. Although the general plan does allow for mixed use and standalone residential within the airport area, the city never updated the zoning to allow for residential uses. And the idea behind that was to originally allow the developers of residential projects in the airport area to bring forward their own a specific plan or plan community amendments that would include or allow the flexibility for them to develop their own development standards to accommodate their projects. However, in order to comply with state law and meet the sites requirement, the sites do need to be zoned to allow residential uses. Therefore, the housing program includes housing program 3.2.3, which states that the city will amend the Newport Place and Cole Center Plan community text to allow residential developments that include a minimum of 30% of the units affordable to lower-income households. However, that will be subject to site development review to ensure integration with the existing area. So those are the two major programs in the housing element. However, there's a number of other programs that were updated or added The different topic areas for those programs include conservation and improvement of housing, variety of housing opportunities, adequate residential sites, provision and preservation of affordable housing, housing for special needs groups, fair housing, and program monitoring. And lastly, just I state that in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, an initial study has been prepared for the project and concluded that the project would not have any potentially significant impacts on the environment and that a negative declaration is warranted. The document was circulated for a 30-day public review period in which we received a total of 6 comment letters. Although not required, staff has prepared responses to each of those comment letters, and they've been included in your staff reports. As a result of those comment letters, there's no new environmental issues identified, and staff believes a negative declaration is still warranted. And that concludes my presentation. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a negative declaration and the housing element update.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
This is a negotiated document, so I don't think that we'll be proposing many policy changes, but I did have a couple of clarifications that I wanted to ask about. I'm looking at this document, the regular, okay, so page 5-124, Housing Program 2.2.11. It says, monitor the impact of Housing Program 2.2.1, Consideration shall include whether the inclusionary program results in cost shifting, where the cost of subsidizing is what they mean, subsiding the affordable units is underwritten by the purchasers of market rate units in the form of higher prices, which was always my understanding is exactly what happened. But this doesn't tell me, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? We're going to monitor it, and what conclusions are we going to draw?
If I may, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, as part of the monitoring program and the results that we get, as part of that, we'll be able to draw some conclusions as to what an appropriate step might be for the future of the program. So
Okay.
I think...
But did the state, in working on this, does the state say, we don't want you to be subsidizing them this way, or do they not care? I just wasn't sure if there's some sort of attitude towards all this.
HCD hasn't, they've taken a neutral stance on
Okay.
inclusionary housing ordinances. They haven't stated whether they prefer them or whether or not they're a constraint to the
Okay.
development of housing.
So we're going to have some flexibility there.
Correct.
Then on page 5-126, Housing Program 3.1.4, sites for both for sale development and rental development. Just my own personal opinion, if we can go for as much rental as possible. I worked on for sale affordable housing programs, and they're a mess. And then finally, one more question on page 5-134, Housing Program 5.1.7, occupancy, single-room occupancy residential hotels. Is that a flop house? Okay, all right. I just wondered.
It is, my experience has been, I've been involved in 3 of them being developed, and they are typically the conversion of an existing motel to a permanent resident situation where the hotel rooms are converted to studio apartments. And so a lot of times they still look the same, although the signage will change, but they are permanent residents, and oftentimes there's very strict screening and on-site management involved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other comments, council? Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, I do. On page 31, I was noticing a chart. Let's see if I can find it. And the table H27, and it goes through and it comes up with an average. And then, so we take those and we average, and the average is different number than the median, which is the midpoint. But then we go up above in the text and we discuss that about the median, and median and average aren't interchangeable. I think one of them needs to be changed.
That is correct. We'll make that.
Okay.
That's a really good catch, by the way, but we
Okay.
will make that correction in the final document.
Okay.
It should read, it should be the text should say, as shown, the overall average rental price for the apartments range from $1,820 to $2,560. So that would match the table below.
Okay, thank you. And then appreciate that you were successful in getting this certified. It's really been a struggle over the years, this whole affordable housing issue. In one chart we used to include in the housing element, just a suggestion, and it's not mandatory, and that is to really demonstrate statistically that we have quite a bit of affordable housing in Newport Beach. And the way that that was done, or the path to doing so, was that you look at your overall housing stock. I think it's like 40% or something of our units are rental. And so then when you look at that median, which is about $1,700, then you would compare that with what our median needs to be for the county. So let's say half of, when you have median, so half above, half below, and if half below are below the county median, I mean, that's, 10,000 or so units. So there's a way to demonstrate that we have really significant affordable housing in our community through an analysis where you look at median and you look at where those rents are. So just a suggestion for the future, because it's something activists come here on a somewhat frequent basis and charge. Their core charge is that we don't have affordable housing in Newport Beach, and I would strongly dispute that.
Okay, Councilmember Selledge.
I noticed that it took 3 years to get this done from 2008 to 2011. And so this one expires in 2014, and it's 2011 now, and it's 3 years. So are you guys going to start working on the 2014 version as soon as we adopt this?
Actually, we've already started.
Okay, good.
Okay. No further comment from council. I guess I'd add my thanks to staff for the long, hard pull to get us to where we are today here. And so congratulations to you. I'm sure you're happier than anyone in this room that we've reached this point. With that, I'll take comment from the public. Anyone wish to make a comment?
Mayor Hennon, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I also appreciate the hard work that must have gone into this. I can't say I read all of it. I just have the little compact version that's out in the lobby. Jaime's last slide dealt with the environmental review process, and I was one of the 6 comment letters that were submitted. And I asked what staff must have thought was a really bizarre question. The secret process requires that the writer of the report identify who the proponent of the proposal, in this case the proposal being to update the housing element, was. The answer came back, it was the city of Newport Beach, which, when last I checked, is the 86,000 people who live here. And I don't have a sense that the need to revise our housing element is something that really bubbled up from the 86,000 people who live here, but rather it seemed to me the proponent, in the sense of who's really pushing this, is the State Department of Housing and Community Development, whose vision seems to be that we need to be adding houses sort of in perpetuity. As the slide said, we need to add 1,914 more housing units. It's a concept that works really well in the semiconductor industry, where they manage to put more and more transistors on a little chip each year. I'm not sure it works so well with people, so I'm just hoping we could get some clarity as to whether the City Council is entirely on board with the idea that we need to add houses, and that's the proper vision for our city for the future in perpetuity. Thank you.
Anyone care to comment?
I would just say, Jim, that you have identified yet another case of the state of California putting mandates on local government requiring us to do things in order to qualify for certain other things and having certain straitjacket ways in which we have to do them. So Yes, in many ways, this is mandated by the state of California. It's one of the many things that they're pushing down on local government that costs money, takes time, and results in results perhaps you don't find satisfactory. I don't know that we necessarily find them all satisfactory, but we do them to comply with state law.
Okay. Comments?
Good evening, Mayor Hann and City Council. My name is Evelyn Hart. I live at 49 Balboa Coves in Newport Beach. I bring you happy Thanksgiving tidings from Friends of Oasis and also from Seaview Lutheran Affordable Housing. I'd like to compliment our staff on this really excellent report that you have gotten out here on the housing element. The seniors, you know, we have so many seniors in the city of Newport Beach, a high percentage of them, and there are some needs out there. And I noticed in the report that there is mentioned numerous times about seniors, and I guess I only had one little comment to bring at this time because we'll be looking maybe at some other future projects. But the City of Newport Beach, your council members have been extremely supportive of seniors, as you know, and that's so much appreciated by everyone, whether you're a senior or maybe a family member or whatever it might be. And the way it's outlined in this report, it seems to be quite adequate and give you really good flexibility on where you would like to go personally in this city. And so we're asking you to take a little extra emphasis maybe back to your city staff and maybe highlight a little bit more along the line of senior housing when those opportunities become available. Thank you. Good night.
I had a follow-up question on that. Where is the document with respect to preservation of existing affordable units? So, for example, Seaview Lutheran and some of the other projects.
Well, the document does identify certain projects that are at risk of converting within the planning period. But with regard to Seaview Lutheran, the city didn't actually have a covenant on that project previously. However, they did ask for assistance from the city for CDBG funding to assist with a deteriorated water delivery system, and we did grant them, I believe, approximately $130,000. In exchange, we did receive a 30-year covenant on that project.
Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and a motion. We have a motion?
I'll second. I just want to make one follow-up comment, too, about the state wanting us to have more housing. It's really a nuanced issue as well, because we're a built-out community, so what they're really saying is we want you to have more density. So there's a real push for higher density and then possible transit systems that go along with it, but it's definitely a density push.
Okay. All right, please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the resolution title, Resolution Number 2011-107, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach adopting a negative declaration and adopting the 2008-2014 housing element update of the general plan. And with that, the motion carries unanimously.
All right, on to City Council redistricting.
Mr. Mayor and council members, this could be a very brief item. You've seen it before. It now has harbor lines in it, though, and the text of the, I'll back up a tiny bit, sorry, for the public. This is the first reading and a public hearing associated with councilmanic redistricting. And when we last visited you, we had a map. It now has harbor lines in the map, which means basically, I guess, that if you live aboard, you might be now formally put in a district, which I guess is a good thing. And it also has the text of each of the districts. So we don't intend to give a staff report. We could if you'd like, but otherwise it's up for your consideration.
I'm fine to not have a staff report.
Yeah, I'll move approval of the item.
Okay, the item
Second.
has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion at council on this item? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on this item?
Mayor Hand and members of the council, my name is Jim Moser. Since there is now both a map and a text, I would suggest if there happened to be a discrepancy between the two, that you want to make it clear which is the controlling document, and I would suggest on handwritten page 5, which is your proposed ordinance, in section 1, the city attorney may already have some rule that one of them takes precedence over the other, but in the section 1, in the middle line, you might say, as more precisely described in the legal description, so that it's clear that that takes precedence over the map if there should be a difference between the two. And I appreciate the clearer map. At the last time the first reading was brought up, the map was extremely small, hard to make out what it said, and I was particularly looking at the little area here where it shows where District 5 turns into District 6 along Bayside Drive, and the coloring kind of slopped around and I couldn't tell where it goes. Now I did read the description, and it uses an extension of Avocado Avenue through here to bisect, to divide Bayside Drive one from the other. And this is a really nitpicking question, but that line now goes through the middle of 2 lots, and I thought the thing was based on a little jigsaw puzzle of statistical units that put people in one area or the other. In particular, there's a home at 401 Avocado and a home at 2137 Bayside Drive. The line goes right down the middle of 2137 Bayside Drive. It's a totally nitpicking question because the chance of somebody in that house wanting to run for city council, and mattering which district they're in, or wanting to be on a committee that they have to be in District 5 or District 6 is probably irrelevant. But I'm just wondering what that house with the line going down the middle of it, what district it's in.
Mayor, members of the City Council, Dan Campanola with the Community Development Department. I can respond to that. That center line is an historic center line down Avocado, and that's be a prolongation, and it does not bisect, that center line does not bisect those 2 particular properties.
Okay, that seems pretty clear. Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Do we have any other comment on this item? Seeing none, bring it back to council for discussion and a vote. Please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for introduction, ordinance number 2011-27, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach changing and redefining the boundaries of the council districts. And with that, the motion carries unanimously.
All right, let's move on to agenda item number 23, which has to do with approval of master fee schedule and change in subsidies.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Tracy McCraner, your Finance Director. I have a brief presentation tonight, just 6 slides. We wanted to give council and the public all the time they needed for any discussion and comments on the fee schedule. This is year 2 of the fee schedule. Oops, this isn't working. This is year 2 of the fee schedule, and the departments selected for study this year were Finance, Recreation, Municipal Operations, and Library. So I'll be going over those 4 departments in detail. Council resolution also requires that the fees, all fees on the schedule not being studied, be reviewed for CPI adjustment. That CPI adjustment for the period between the last year's study and this year's is a positive 3.07. CPI can be positive or negative. It just happened to be positive this last period. So that is the CPI adjustment to all the other fees outside of those 4 departments being studied. All fees per city attorney recommendation have been rounded down to the nearest dollar. Thank you. This summary of fee changes shows all the fees that were actually studied this year, almost 250 total fees. And what I really wanted to point out for council and the public is that 85% of the fees studied are being recommended to either stay the same or go down or be eliminated altogether, leaving only 15% of all fees studied with a recommendation for an increase. Finance Department, again, had more fees recommended to go down or be eliminated or stay the same versus going up. But of the 15 fees that we did recommend to go up, almost all were immaterial with the exception of 6 different vehicles for hire fees. And the reason for that increase was detailed in the staff report, but I'm available to talk about that if you like. There's also 1 special package TOT audit fee. This is a fee that's not requested frequently by the hotels, but if it is, the cost of that went up about $54 from the last time it was studied. We are recommending 3 new fees outlined here. TOT delinquencies, while not a significant fee, we have a significant amount of late payments. We get on average about 140 a year. So we'd kind of like to discourage that. It takes a lot of staff time calling and chasing down the owners, and those are mostly the residential TOT payments. And then we have a couple recommendations for reprint fees that we've not traditionally charged in the past. And the short-term lodging permits, I'm pleased to say that we have been able to work with the short-term lodging agents and actually some of the owners. And while the new initial permit fee, the actual cost for service did increase about $54 between the last time it was studied and now, we have eliminated a really time-consuming renewal process. And I want to thank Councilman Curry for really encouraging us to go back out there and work with the community. It was a process that we needed to do to be sure that we were compliant with the municipal code, and it was for information that we needed that we'd had a hard time getting from the community before. But with talking to the agents and the owners, they're more than happy to get together with us and work through how they could get us that information so that we don't have to go through the old process that we did.
While you're talking on that.
Sure.
The page 4, the second paragraph, I wonder if this is what generated Councilman Curry's work with you, because it says staff recommends that the new SDLP fee be set at 100% cost recovery. Is that what we're talking about right now?
That's the initial permit fee that we will still be recommending to charge, but the part 2 is the discontinuing of the renewal process.
Okay,
That was the
I have a problem if we say a significant component of our cost relates to outdated information systems that drive a manual process. Well, so the city can't keep up with whatever technology there is. We have to do it manually. Why are we, I don't think that should be passed on. If we can't get our act together and be more efficient, they shouldn't have to pay
Let me
more.
chime in there. You raise a good point. This is not the staff's fault, but this is a product that we'll talk about actually next week about our IT strategic plan. We have not invested in our information technology, but I do think it's something that whenever you purchase new technology, there should be a component of that. If it's used for a specific process involving a fee-driven item, that it should be applied to the fee. We'll do that. We'll be able to look at whether or not we can lower that with the new technology later on after it's in hand. We just don't have the ability to do this efficiently and quickly today. And I think it should be passed on, the new purchase at least, to the applicant, and at least for the process today.
I disagree.
Okay.
So noted.
If you're talking about passing that on, what kind of an amortization schedule are you using?
We'll actually work with our consultant to decide what that appropriateness of that is. It could be a 10-year kind of thing that's passed on to, and not all of it. Remember, I think this is basically our ERP that would help do this.
Right.
So that's a small component of this budgeting software would relate to this, so a very small cost percentage of it would be passed along. But sorry to get on my soapbox. This is a community with old technology, and we need to invest in it. And again, that's what we're talking about next week.
I agree with that part of it. What I'm saying is, because we do have old technology and we have to do a lot of things manually, I don't know that people should get dinged right now for the extra costs because we just haven't been able to keep up with what we should have been keeping up with.
Well, then the rest of the community is bearing the cost of the personnel and the processes associated with those folks that do that
So
manual
we're saying
processing.
all of our systems are
Not all of them,
insufficient.
but certainly the biggest one that's insufficient, and it's huge across the organization, is our budgeting system.
Okay.
Thank you. And just a side note, we did work with Craig Batley and some other stakeholders about the reason for the cost increase. This hasn't been studied for several years, and they were supportive of this increase and the reason behind it, and then very equally supportive of getting rid of the renewal process.
But with regard to the renewal process, we're getting rid of it, but there is going to be a renewal process. It's just going to be a faster, better, simpler one.
Right. Now it's going to be a collaborative effort with the agents, the owners, and my revenue division, and they're already setting up some meetings to come up with the information that we need to ensure compliance with the Muni Code and what they can do to help us get that information quickly.
All right.
Municipal operations. These are just user-based fees again. They have nothing to do with the rate fees, so just those special fees on request from users. There was actually a staff recommendation to eliminate 3 and decrease 2. Of the 9 that are recommended to increase, they're pretty much all immaterial except these 3 identified here. The reasons behind those increases, again, were detailed in the staff report, but because water installation fee and hydrant flow test fees doubled and tripled, staff is recommending a 3-period phase-in, and this would be the first phase-in, and we would do it with each subsequent study going forward if council approves. And then we want to change the way we bill for delinquent water service. It's apparent that the customer that discontinues the water service oftentimes moves and is not the person who needs it restored, so we have split that up. And then we are recommending 1 new fee. The previous process wasn't working. Our city equipment and property was being stolen or damaged and subject to theft. So staff did a survey of other communities. They do charge for this fee, but again, we want to ensure participation and compliance. So we're recommending a new recovery percentage by council. The fee is about $365 for the full cost of providing the service, but staff is recommending that council consider just recovering 30% of that, or $100, and they feel that that's fair. It's also fair market with other communities, and would encourage participation. Comments on mod? Great. Well, then I'll go to the last 2 departments. The main thing I want to talk about on this slide is our recreation and library programs are part of those programs that makes Newport Beach unique. Staff and the directors and the city manager have recommended 95% of their fees are either staying the same or we're just eliminating them altogether. The staff in these 2 departments work very hard every year, whether they're being studied or not, to do market surveys, comparison surveys, and keep their high-quality programs. In the past, facilities charges had not been allocated per the cost allocation program, which they should be, but rightly so. Staff does not recommend that we pass those costs on. They're significant costs. We have beautiful facilities in this community, but we want to encourage the same level of participation. It's what makes this city great to live in, and it's why visitors come and visit. Libraries are the second most visited destination in our city other than our beaches. So with council's approval, there'll just be a few fees going up. And the one that I'd like to talk about, and we kind of alluded to earlier, is the special event appeal fee. The fee schedule previously had 3 different fee levels for special event appeals. We're recommending removing the first 2. Not only are they not appealed, but it's just never happened in city history, but there have been a few occasions of appeals to city council. The consultant calculated the staff time, and that's all staff time. It's recreation, attorneys, finance, mod, general services time. It's over $6,000 to actually get ready for the appeal, to prepare for council, to do all the studies, to work with the special event committee. We obviously can't justify passing that cost on to the special event, but we did want to pass something on. We didn't want it to be taken lightly. It is a very labor-intensive process. So at this time, we're recommending that council consider subsidizing that fee by 75% and only having a cost recovery of 25%, which would make the fee $1,500 to appeal a special event decision to the city council. And this is also the point, while the appeal process for planning is not being studied till next year, at this time, council can make any changes, increases, or decreases to any fee in the schedule. So this would also be the time to discuss if you want to lower that planning commission appeal fee.
I think we have some more homework to do on that first.
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
We come back
okay.
to that.
Sorry. And then in closing, the majority of our municipal services are covered by taxes. That's police, fire, residential trash pickup. That's 90% of the services we provide are covered by those. But this really just focuses on the user fees. These are special fees. They're only incurred because of a special request by a participant or a program or an organization. And the municipal code recommends full cost recovery for the city, with the exception of Exhibit A, which we've talked about. It's 4 to 5 pages of exemptions, because this and previous councils have wanted to be able to offer a lot of our quality programs at a significantly reduced cost. So with that, I will open it up to final questions. And I did check with the city attorney. We're not allowed to come back on the 29th because it's a special meeting. So we will be back for the second reading of this item on December 13th. And again, the next study will be 2012, and we'll be back with community development, fire, and public works. I'd like to take any comments or questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
On the vehicles for hire, I notice it includes pedicabs and as well as sightseeing vehicles.
Yes.
And I can understand why we would want anybody, the individuals that are doing the driving or the peddling or whatever it is, be sure they're up to snuff. But it seems like when we have our the fees for each additional vehicle, what are we doing for those? Are we looking at the vehicles? Are we checking them? I mean, are we looking for brakes? That seems like, if we're talking about pedicabs, that seems like a lot of money.
It was a
what are we doing?
significant increase, and from what I can tell, and I don't have police representatives here, but I have the consultant here, it's the extensive background checks, DUI processing, and Department of Justice work that the police have to go through. So it's a significant amount of police time.
No, I understand. I understand as far as the individual, but
Okay.
I'm saying we have fees of like almost $500 for each, for the first vehicle and for each additional vehicle. What are we doing for that $500 to ensure public safety? I mean, if we're doing something, that's fine, but.
Okay. I don't have the answer to that question, but I can get that for you.
All right, and then, I mean, because I'm looking, it says a firearm sales permit is only $69. Well, I hope we're doing an extensive background check on people who are selling guns. That's certainly an issue, and we're charging less for adult-oriented business permits. And I don't know if we're doing background checks on them either. But
Guns don't kill people, pedicabs do.
Pedicabs kill people.
But anyway, if we could get some information
I
on what
will
we're
get
doing
you more background on that.
for that, because it seems, as I say, I certainly agree with doing thorough background checks, but if we're just charging and we're not looking at the vehicles or anything, that seems like a lot of money.
Okay.
Is that it? Okay. Councilmember Curry.
Well, thank you. First of all, congratulations. I knew there was a better solution to the short-term residential permits issue, and it looks like you've been able to work that out with the permit holders, and I think that's a great accomplishment. You know, I think what this report reflects is the progress that we've made since 2008, where we had gone for many, many years without adjusting our fees, and it was a very painful and perhaps imprecise process where I think we lowered 50 fees and raised 150 fees in a process that I don't think was satisfactory to anybody. Now that we've bitten the bullet and gone and done that, and we're now in the second round of doing these, as we look at these costs, what we see is that because of the city's efficiency, and that's really the only reason why you would see a fee go down compared to costs, we're able to actually lower more fees than are being proposed to be raised. And I think that reflects increased efficiency on the part of the city staff, and I think probably a more common sense way of doing things in a lot of cases. I think as Mayor Pro Tem Gardner was pointing out, there's still perhaps some examples that are outliers that just don't pass the good sense test sometimes, but for the most part, I think this is a great improvement of process. The one thing I think we as a council don't want to do, I mean, we've passed the ordinance that says these are the percentages of the cost that we're going to recover. And when we deviate from that and allow a fee to get out of sync for several cycles, we end up with the problems and the issues that we've had with the mooring fees and with the first round of fees that we had back in 2008. So I don't think that's good policy. So there may be some exceptions here that need to be looked at more carefully, but generally I want to congratulate you for a good job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Selledge.
Every time I look at this list of fees, I seem to come up with two questions. Just one on, this isn't on a new fee, it's an existing fee. On development agreements, we're charging $166 an hour. Is that going to pay the planners, or who's that?
Is that in community development?
Yeah.
The area? It wasn't studied, but let me see if Kim Brandt knows. Kim, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Councilman Selledge was asking about?
On the development agreement fee, the $166 an hour, whose time is charged to that?
Councilman Selledge, that is a time that primarily the staff planner and any other staff member who is working on the development agreement would code their time cards to that process.
So like city attorney's office or public works?
That is correct.
Or any
That is
department?
correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay.
I think
Well,
I would like to add, too, community development, because it was in the process of such a significant restructuring, we saved it for year 3, which is the year coming up, and I think we'll be able to come back with some significant changes for you as we come back for year 3 fee study.
What we do tonight, if we say, okay, we're going to hear it again, but does that mean that we can't make changes next time to some of these numbers?
If you made substantive changes to the numbers, when it comes back next time, it'd have to come back for a first reading again. You can only make the substantive changes prior to the second reading, at the first reading.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's what I was wondering. So that if I got an answer that I thought was silly as far as the vehicles for hire, then I could persuade my fellow council members, then we would have to start over again in a sense.
Well, you could make changes this evening, just changes couldn't be made between.
Right, I don't have the
Could you,
information.
Aaron, just thinking out loud, could you leave that fee out and adopt the rest of them?
Yeah,
And then
that's another option. You could take a fee out if you had questions about it, and then they can bring that fee back another time and approve the other fees.
Could I provide her an appropriate answer next week, and then they
Well,
talk,
not
they
in
can't,
case
it has to be
Councilmember
public?
Garden didn't like to
Okay.
want to vote for it, or we didn't like the way it was structured, so. I guess I'd prefer taking it out if there's some uncertainty, or not changing it, and then coming back with more data.
Well,
We
I mean,
could do this when we
this
adopt
is
the
just,
budget,
that's just
too.
my view of it.
Yeah.
I certainly, if everybody else thinks it's a good fee or doesn't have any questions about it, then we can go ahead. I can just.
I think we could easily leave it out. We haven't had one of these fee requested for several years, so I think just for conservative sake, we could probably remove it easily and not have any impact.
I forgot about that.
Well-
I'm making my big
well-
stand on something that doesn't have any use at all.
Or the other way is to go ahead and pass it as it is, and then based on the information that would be generated, we could always come back with an item to change it, right?
That's fine, too.
Because that way, if you don't get information that causes you to want to make a change, then it's done, and we're not, does that work? Okay. All right, I had a couple of questions. When I added it up, it looked like the total aggregate dollars of fee increase associated with the 4 departments was about $61,000.
True.
Of increase.
Of
in
increased
fee.
revenue, if approved.
But that number is already net of the declines. In other words, netting out, taking all of the increases and netting out all the
Yes.
declines, it's a gross fee increase of $61,000 over those 4 departments.
As recommended by staff, yes.
Yeah. And do we have any sense of what's the denominator of that? What is the gross fees generated?
The gross fees generated as budgeted is about $14 million for all charges for services. The 4 departments studied this year represent about 25% of that, or $3.35 million. Almost all of that is recreation programs, which, as we've discussed, are already significantly subsidized by the city. So $60,000 times
$3 million.
$14 million, yeah. It's
Well, on a base of
small.
$3 million relating to those
Right,
departments.
it's less
A
than
very, very
less than a
tiny
tenth of a
overall
percent.
percentage increase. Okay, and then it was referenced in the report that by action of how we've organized all of this, there was a CPI increase applied to all the fees that weren't studied here.
Yes.
So I guess that's a 3% increase on roughly $10 million
yeah.
worth of fees? Or-
Yes. And not all fees are eligible for CPI,
that's
things for
about
photocopying cents, but 3% of 10 million
So
would
that's
be
about
$300,000.
$300,000 of fee increase by application of the CPI.
And that's for every single fee in the schedule as presented.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to clarify those items.
Okay.
Okay, any other council comment? All right, do we have comments from the public on this agenda item?
Mayor Hannan, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. Just to remind you, I think the city manager said he wanted to defer this, but on handwritten page 48, it is, as the cost recovery schedule. The community development director earlier this evening recommended changing these recovery fees of 50% for appeals to the city council and appeals to the planning commission to 25%. So the city manager's advice, I believe, is to defer that, but that is, of course, up to you. And it is, they are fees that she was suggesting reducing to half, and it does impact people between now and whenever you choose to change those numbers here. On the next page after that, there's a number of fees here that say the cost recovery is up to a certain percent, up to 45%, up to 85%. I am a little vague on who it is, who decides whether it's at 0 or 45% or where in between. So I'm not sure I understand what the meaning of the up to percentages is in that category. And then going back one page, which is the actual ordinance for adopting that fee recovery schedule, there's two things that are baffling to me at the very top of this page, which is handwritten page 47. First thing says, whereas the dog licensing program has been outsourced, a reference to the subsidy is no longer required. Now, I understand it's been the long-standing policy of the City Council to want to encourage pet owners to sterilize their dogs, and the license for a sterilized dog is half the cost of one for a unfixed dog. I'm not sure I understand how outsourcing that affects anything. If you're still wanting to charge half the price, there must still be a cost required for that service. If we're charging for the cost, you're still needing to say 50% is being subsidized in the cost recovery thing. So I don't understand that. And the next line says, whereas the cost recovery percentage of meeting room rentals should be rounded up to 1%, it was formerly 0.2%. Renting a meeting room costs a fairly large amount of money, $80 or a couple of $100 or something like that. And going from 0.2% to 1% might seem like a cleanup of something, but that's a 5-time increase in the fee, and yet in the fee schedule, the costs haven't changed. So I am baffled by how you can go from 0.2% to 1% and not change the fees.
Is somebody keeping track of all these questions? Okay, because we will want to respond to them. All right.
I'm not a big advocate of the city charging for services. The next item on the agenda is going to be about tree removal, and we are looking at fees from the Municipal Operations Department, and I don't know if there's any fees connected with tree operations that residents request. There are none listed in the fee schedule at present. And finally, I wanted to talk about the library charges. I was at the last, which are listed on page 29 of the fee schedule. I was at the last meeting of the Board of Library Trustees, and they have a whole lot of fees that are not listed here, charges for overdue books, replacing broken things, stuff of that sort, that are not listed on the list at all, and they haven't finished making their decision about that. And before I run out of time, the last one I wanted to mention was the interlibrary loan fee, which is, I think, mentioned on one of the slides. It's on handwritten page 5. And it's mentioned that we charge here $5 for requesting an item through what is called interlibrary loan, something that our library does not have. I agree that we have a very fine library system, but it turns out if one goes across the street to Costa Mesa, not across the street, across town to Costa Mesa, and uses the Orange County Library that is there is no charge for interlibrary loan service. And there's a reason for that, because the state of California regards access to library services to be a very fundamental privilege of living in this state. Library services, access to library resources are supposed to be provided free to the public. Maybe a question about whether you want to rent something to take it home, but you're supposed to be able to access the services in the facility, and the state actually subsidizes the cost of the interlibrary loans. So I'm not sure that it's taking a little bit off the shine of us being the shining city by the bay if people of low income here cannot enjoy services that they can for free elsewhere. I guess that's pretty much what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, are we in a position to respond to those questions?
I was able to respond to some to Mr. Mosher before the meeting, but I will get together with him, make sure I have it all written down, and we'll respond in writing to him and copy the council, and then we'll be able to discuss it at the second reading.
All right. Did Mr. Mosher's question generate any concern about passing, moving forward with the fee schedule here? Is there anything fundamental to these issues that's of concern to anyone? Okay. Do we have any other public comment on this item? Okay, with the commitment that you'll be getting back with Mr. Mosher and discussing these other items and clarifying them, that's fine. Please vote.
We don't have a motion.
You know what? That's a good question. We need a motion.
I'll move the item, including the reduction of the appeals fee from 50% to 25%, as noted in the study session report.
Well,
Did we decide to do that?
I don't think we decided to do that.
We didn't decide to do that?
Well,
they
yeah,
were
the thought was that we'd come back to you. Right now, I think it's still set at 50, and I think we'd continue that, but we'd come back to you with a recommendation of a new cost, and then you could decide how much to recover.
All right, fair enough. We'll, with the understanding that that's in fact coming back to the council, then I'll just move the item.
I'll second it.
Okay. Now, let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the titles for the resolutions and ordinances. Resolution number 2011-108, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending the city's master schedule of fees to be charged for user services. Ordinance number 2011-28 for introduction. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Section 3.36.030 of the Newport Beach Municipal Code. Ordinance number 2011-29 for introduction. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Newport Beach Municipal Code Section 5.04.200 pertaining to duplicate license fees and deleting Newport Beach Municipal Code Sections 5.08.40, 5.08.50, 5.08.60, 5.08.70, and 5.08.80. Ordinance number 2011-30 for introduction. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Sections 14.12.10, 14.12.90, 14.12.125, 14.20.10, 14.20.20, 14.20.50, 14.20.60, 14.20.70, and deleting Section 14.20.30. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
All right. Took almost as long to read the titles as it did to discuss it. We'll move on to item number 24, the appeal of the Parks, Beach, and Recreation Commission regarding removal of blue gum eucalyptus trees on Holiday Road.
Mark Harmon, Director of Operations, and with me tonight, Mr. Dan Serino, Parks and Tree Superintendent and Certified Arborist. He can help us answer any of the technical questions that come up. Tracy, thanks for queuing up the PowerPoint. I appreciate that. I also have about 6 slides. There we go. Mine aren't quite as detailed as Ms. McCraner's, so we should get through these fairly quickly. First slide, recent events. Just run through a few of the things that got us to where we are today. Obviously, we're talking about the blue gum eucalyptus trees. Back in September, a decision was made to remove the 100-plus blue gum eucalyptus trees on the 7 medians on Irvine between Westcliff, 17th to Dover. We are a joint meeting with the PB&R Commission and the Parks Commission of Costa Mesa. We have a joint meeting scheduled for December 7th where we will be looking at some options for reforesting those medians. And I think that will come back to council, obviously. I think you're going to be pretty pleased with those options. We hired a contract arborist to evaluate the blue gum trees throughout the city. That arborist was our Dan Jensen Incorporated. He was tasked with the job of looking at the remaining 250 plus eucalyptus trees in the city, evaluating those trees for safety reasons. What we did, staff directed Mr. Jensen to take a look really first at 3 different areas where there were high concentrations of these eucalyptus trees. Again, there's 250 spread throughout the city, but 3 areas, 4th Avenue in Corona Del Mar, Holiday Road, and what I call the Castaways Park bike path. That's there at the end of Westcliff. kind of between Castaways Park and that pathway right there at West Cliff and Dover. Mr. Jensen did evaluate the trees in those areas, starting first with 4th Avenue. We did remove approximately 33 trees on 4th Avenue. We are working today with the residents on selecting replacement trees for that area, both north and south of the highway. We've done curb and gutter repair work that the eucalyptus trees, the damage that those trees had caused. And again, we'll be putting new trees in there within the next few months. So we're getting some good feedback from the residents on that project. We then turned our attention to the Holiday Road area. We did ask Mr. Jensen to take a look at 18 of the eucalyptus trees in that area, and we returned to or presented that issue to the Parks, Beaches, Recreation Commission on November 1st. In regards to the inspection process, when Mr. Jensen, and I do apologize if people were at the PB&R Commission meeting, they've seen this before, but when Mr. Jensen goes out to take a look at these trees to evaluate their condition or their risk potential for failure, these are the things that he looks at. I know this question has come up before from residents. What does an arborist do when he goes out and looks at a tree? He looks at, obviously, the age and pruning history. He gets that pruning history from the city, looks at the size, he determines the age of the tree, the overall health of the tree. A lot of times that can be established by the foliage density, maybe some wound developments within that tree from pruning or from limb failure. They look at all of those things. Site conditions, landscape type, irrigation is critical when you're evaluating the health of a tree. Overwatering could be an issue, as well as underwatering in some cases. Potential targets, this is real big. I've talked about this to a couple of groups now. Potential targets or risk of failure. What is around those trees? Are they set on a busy street, such as the trees on Irvine? Or are they very close to homes, such as the trees that were on 4th Avenue and on Holiday as well? Those 50-foot trees, 40-foot trees, many cases are 10, 12-foot from homes, from streets, and those things. So that's evaluated or taken under consideration as well. And then tree defects, crown defects, a lean of the tree. Sometimes a slight lean to a tree is not cause for alarm, so you have to take a look at that. And they look at the lean of the tree. Has the dirt around the tree been disrupted? There's signs that lean might not be, a normal part of the growth of that tree. It's leaned over a short period of time. Once the arborist evaluates the tree and looks at all of those different areas, he rates that, or he puts that into an equation to come up with a numerical rating of the risk failure of that particular tree. And again, the arborist looks at each individual tree, not a windrow of 30 trees, and if one looks a bit shaky, the 30 are lumped into that category. He looks at each individual tree and rates them separately. This ANSI 300 is a relatively new tool that arborists use, and if I could, I'm going to read just a touch of the ANSI A300, this Part 9 that it talks about. Here's how they describe this new standard. The American National Standards Institute, ANSI, approved a new standard for tree risk assessment designated ANSI A300, tree risk assessment and tree structure assessment. This new tree risk assessment is the first national standard to address risk assessment of trees and takes precedence over any previous tree care management standards or guidelines. So this is now the industry-accepted tool for how arborists go out and rate a tree as to risk of failure. And you can see here, once they look at the probability of failure, the size of the defective part, and then the target area. Again, what I was just talking about, that failure zone or risk of failure. And then they assign it a numerical rating here. You can see high risk, 9 to 11 points, extreme risk. We have a tree with an extreme risk. The recommendation at that point is the city manager makes an immediate decision to have that tree removed. 9 to 11 high risk, you consider removal as soon as possible, and then on down to 0 risk, which in many cases is your very young trees, and not in danger of falling, and certainly not in danger of property or life risk, if they do fail. On the Holiday Road tree ratings, you can see here, the arborist, Mr. Jensen, looked at the 18 trees in the 2200 block of Holiday Road. You can see here 14 of those 18 trees did rate an extreme, high to extreme risk, and then 4 of the 18 trees were a moderate risk. The kind of the catch here with the moderate risk is we went out as staff with the arborists and we measured some of those areas where some of the extreme risk trees were next to trees in the moderate risk category. Let me explain real quick. We had a tree that was rated a 10, a very high risk for failure, that was in, I believe, 2 feet of a tree that was rated a 7. When we removed that tree that's rated a 10, because they were windrow trees, which means they were planted extremely close together to protect the fields, crop fields from the wind, we removed that 10 tree. It will impact that lower risk tree, and so our recommendation would be to remove both. So you can see the ratings of those 18 trees. The recommendation I brought forward to the Parks, Beaches, Recreation Commission on November 1st was to remove and replace those 18 blue gum eucalyptus trees, the 4 as moderate and then the 14 as high risk for failure. The recommendation also included that staff would, as we did on 4th, that we would repair and replace any irrigation that's disrupted as part of the tree removals, and repair, replace sod damaged during the removal process. We then would work with those impacted homes, and I believe there's one home with 5 trees. We will work with those impacted homeowners to replace those trees with new trees. Again, our goal here is to maybe come up with a choice of 2 to 3 different species of trees that a homeowner would be able to select from. Repair, replace irrigation, replacing those trees is done at the city expense after we remove the large trees. The Commission decided on November 1st by a vote of 4-3 to retain the trees on Holiday Road. And some of the comments and some of their thoughts I've put here on the slide. Commissioners in favor obviously had expressed serious concerns giving the risk rating that these trees have. We hired this professional arborist. Professional arborist came out, examined these trees, and gave them a high risk of failure. Those commissioners thought that was a risk that wasn't acceptable. The 4 commissioners that opposed the removal of the trees primarily expressed concerns regarding the mitigation. Is there things that staff could do to mitigate or to lessen the degree or risk of failure for those 18 trees? I think one of the recommendations was, is there a large enough stake? I think we've all seen stakes next to smaller trees when they're starting to grow and it supports the tree. Could staff install a big enough stake to hold up these huge trees? There was mention of a couple of tools that are used in the industry. A resistograph, could you bore a hole in there and check in certain areas of the tree? And we certainly can explain why we don't use that tool much. But are there things that that staff can do to lessen that failure? The decision from Mr. Jensen and from in-house staff is that these would not, in fact, lessen that risk of failure. And so our recommendation stays the same. Staff tonight, then, is recommending that the City Council reverse the decision of the Commission We do remove those 18 trees, repair, replace irrigation, and put sod in to fix the property, and then replace those 18 trees, or 18 trees or trees that the residents, if, let's say, a person had 5 in their front yard, maybe 5's a little much, maybe they would select 2 trees. But we would work with the residents to replace those removed trees. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council?
Questions?
Go ahead.
Can we get the lights?
Yeah.
Within our urban forest, how many trees do we have?
Approximately 36,000.
Okay, so 36,000, and we have an urban forester. Some years ago, the city council said we want to have an urban forester, someone to manage all of this.
Correct.
Okay. And he goes out and he conducts assessments and reports to someone in management what his findings are.
That's correct. The city arborist will make routine checks of trees, as well as the company that trims the trees will alert staff to any issues that they see.
Okay. One of the things that I find troubling is we have 35,000 trees, and most of us have been up here at least 5 years, and this is the first request to remove 17 trees. Have these been the only trees that have problems?
Well, certainly, I wouldn't say that these are the only trees of the 39,000 that have had or have problems. Obviously, we were alerted to issues with this specific species, the blue gum eucalyptus, and that's why we hired the arborist to take a look. Staff will be moving forward with recommendations that we check other large canopy trees that have limited growth space or have potential for problems. As it states in your report, the blue gum eucalyptus, is prone to certain things that if we see, during a visual check, if we see certain things with the tree, we can make recommendations based on that.
Okay. Mark, too, sorry, Councilmember Daigle. The question may be also involving the tree removals that the council doesn't see and the commission doesn't see. There's a lot of them that go to me, and I'm the one that makes the decision, and out they go, and we'll at least dozens a year are processed that way, and that's in Council Policy G1.
Right. So we're talking still about this 35,000 tree forest, and there must be a system in place where the urban forester on a regular or periodic basis goes out and evaluates trees, or we have a contract arborist that serve that purpose. So is somebody out there on a periodic basis looking at trees, because you mentioned symptoms like trees leaning and other problems. So is somebody doing that on a regular basis?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And then that individual, presumably, this is a governmental agency, they make reports, they report to somebody. Do they make recommendations, and who do they make those recommendations to for removal?
Well, those recommendations, if the arborist, let's use leaning, a leaning tree. If the arborist is out doing an inspection, or again, if the company that the city contracts with is trimming a tree during their normal grid trimming process, one of those two notices a lean to a tree, an unsafe lean, an unnatural lean. Some trees grow up, not every tree grows straight up. There's an unnatural lean that causes alarm. That city arborist will come back, fill out a removal request form, and that form will go through the channels, usually my signature, city manager's signature, sometimes a risk manager's signature, and then that tree will be removed.
Okay, and then how many trees have been removed through that whole process?
Well, per year, Dan's telling me 50 to 100 a year, just depending.
Okay. And then when I, probably like a lot of people in the community, have just been more sensitized to trees, and it seems as if there's issues out there that kind of go beyond the eucalyptus. For example, when Steve puts a pole in Public Works along a street where you go certain miles per hour, it's a breakaway pole. So if you hit the pole, it has some give, yet there's trees that are right next to the pole that have no give. And have you looked at this issue at all in terms of road safety, where trees are being planted? And is this something that you can evaluate moving forward?
Yes, we certainly keep that in mind when we plant trees. I knew there was, I leaned over to ask Dan a question, because we have a policy of not planting trees directly next to power poles.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, our policy is to stay 20 feet away from a power pole. So, obviously we don't have breakaway trees, but there, if it's 20 foot away from the power pole, we try and make these areas as safe as we can.
Mm-hmm.
We don't put trees where they block stop signs. We don't put trees. We work very closely with Mr. Badham's department, his traffic engineering crew, and we don't put trees where it causes any kind of a visual impact to traffic at all. If you come up to a street, we don't want trees blocking your vision to see cars coming. So we are careful. We are very careful where we put trees. We don't put them next to utility boxes or poles. Hopefully we're safe in doing that.
Okay. And is there a kind of a general plan as to where this forest is growing and how much further it's going to grow?
You mean grow as far as numbers of trees?
Yeah. I mean,
well,
what are we looking at achieving here, and who has given that direction?
Well, I give the recommendations to the city manager. Now, when you say, will the city grow in the number of trees, I would say probably so. I received an email from the Corona Del Mar Homeowners Association, and they're having a meeting on January, I want to say 16th, a Thursday night. Their concern is that trees have been removed over the years, and they have some vacant sites where they would like trees placed. They want me as a guest speaker to talk about replacing those trees that were removed over the last several years. Given that, and that people like trees replaced as trees fail, or that there's been vacant well sites for a number of years, then I would guess that the urban forest may grow in numbers. I think that's different, though, than how do we manage the urban forest. We have to take a look at the age of trees. Clearly, many trees, a number of years ago, were planted in places that aren't right for that particular tree.
What I'm just, and I had one additional question, trying to get my arms around is this kind of haphazard, or has someone come up with a plan, and if not, it seems like moving forward, someone kind of has to reevaluate some of these issues and say, really, where are we going with this urban forest?
Councilmember Daigle, I think you do bring up a good point. We generally follow Council Policy G1, which encourages a robust urban forest, but I think in light of the past few months, it's always appropriate to review that policy as to how things are processed and to look at it in the context of the larger forest. Do we want it to get bigger? Do we want it to stay the same? Should it get smaller? I think that's a good discussion that the community would want to be involved in.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then my final question, thank you for your patience, is with the pruning, who is doing that? I receive complaints, people that know a lot about trees, they feel as if pruning ought to be done to scale, and that in some instances what's happening is, the roots are just growing like crazy, and the tree goes up, and we're basically ending up with a telephone pole with some fuzz on top, and that versus really pruning the tree to scale. Who are the resources that are pruning these trees, and what skill level do they have?
Okay, you mentioned roots, and then you mentioned fuzz at the top of the pole.
Being
are we
leaves.
talking pruning the canopy or the roots?
What people feel is happening, some people feel is happening, is that instead of pruning to scale, what's happened is the roots continue to grow, and then the tree just gets taller, and we're topping it off.
So you're talking about the canopy.
Right.
We contract with the firm West Coast Arborist, WCA, to do the grid pruning for the city. Grid pruning, we divide it into, I believe there's 8 sections of the city, and they will go through, depending on the species of tree, like a palm tree every year, other trees every 3 years, and prune the trees within that grid. They do that there's a very specific type of pruning that takes place. There's industry standards monitored by our in-house arborists. so that we don't get trees that are topped. And we've all seen those trees where the branches, just bare branches, are sticking up. We don't do that. We prune very carefully. You could probably prune much less often if you hacked the tree or topped the tree, but it invites disease, and quite honestly, it looks really ugly. So that company prunes according to standards that we set, standards that the industry sets.
Okay, I'd like to pull us back to the agenda item here. Did you have any more questions? Or? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note to Mark that the Residents Association meets Thursday morning and not evening, so it's 7:30 in the morning.
Is that breakfast today?
It's nothing.
Bring your own coffee.
All right. All right, Councilmember Selledge, did you have a comment?
Councilman Gardner.
Okay.
Or you did. We're getting off topic.
All right. Any further questions, discussion from council? Okay. Then I'd like to invite comments from the public on this agenda item.
Good evening, Mayor Hand, council members. My name's Mark Burney. I live on Holiday Road. We have 5 of the subject trees in our front yard. I did speak at the PB&R committee meeting on this issue, and we still have questions regarding the information that's been provided to us, and certain concerns about how this process has been undertaken. In terms of the report of the contract arborist, we haven't seen that report. I'm curious in terms of the grading of the trees, if it is specific as to location to a home, and that by default makes it a dangerous tree, versus a tree being diseased or having some other defect. If, for example, all the trees in our front yard are rated as dangerous simply because they're in close proximity to our home. We're also interested in information as to how these trees were rated in years past. Obviously, there has been a significant event that has caused the city to reevaluate these types of trees. I don't know if council wants to answer those questions at this time or at the end. In terms of the communication that has taken place between the city and ourselves as a resident, there hasn't been any communication or consultation. We were simply noticed as to the first meeting, and then again on Thursday, we received notice of this meeting. The staff report, which I appreciate Mr. Harmon's comments, and it certainly is a thorough report, speaks of the fact that the city plans to work with the affected residents on replacement trees. But there has been no consultation with the residents on Holiday Street, as far as I know, during this process, and that is of concern. The feeling among many of the residents is that this is a reactionary decision based on the events that took place in September, and that simply it is a litigation or liability concern, and for that reason alone, the large trees are being removed. The PB&R obviously made a recommendation and did make findings. I don't know why this council sees to overturn those findings. And then finally, we would like a continuance. We'd like the city to consult with us, to speak with us about the individual trees. We are the most affected by the decision. There's 5 of them in my front yard. I certainly don't want them to fail, but I also don't want them removed if they don't need to be removed. And with that, I'd urge this council to either continue the vote on this until staff can speak with individual residents on this issue, provide a more detailed explanation as to how individual trees are rated and how that rating system works. And with that, I thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. It probably is worthwhile for us to pause here, and since Mark had several questions, Mark Harmon, are you prepared to answer those? I hope you recorded those various questions.
Yeah, and if I don't get them right, maybe Mark, I try and write and listen. I don't do that very well at the same time. But the one question that certainly got my attention was, were those trees rated high probability of failure just because where they were located? Located next to a home, a busy street? And that answer is no. Part of that overall rating, you saw the 11 or 12 or 10, There are 4 areas. I touched on them a little bit. I'll do it again real quick. There's probability of failure. What's the overall health of that tree? That's one numerical rating. The size of the tree. Again, if a tree could be ill health, but if it's only 5 feet tall, it probably isn't going to hurt a whole lot if it fails. The target, and then the overall rating. That's how we come up with that, or the arborist comes up with that one number. Just
Are these
the
four,
target.
are these 4 factors equally weighted in terms of
They
adding
are.
up the score?
They are.
4 factors, 12 points, each factor gets up to 3 points.
Three factors, each of the 4 points.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
So if a tree is perfectly healthy and it's 10 feet from a home, it would not rate that high probability of failure.
Presumably, if everything else were perfect, that tree would get a rating of 4, because it's right next to a home, but everything else is okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
And then, go ahead.
And then, as far as communication with the residents, it was through a notice, it was through PB&R, the same process we went through with the homeowners, residents on 4th and Corona Del Mar. We had this presentation of information at the PB&R meeting. I did have, my contact information is still up there, offered to meet with residents regarding their specific trees, again, as I've done in other areas of the city, as far as, okay, if this tree comes out, it might disrupt this irrigation. We're going to put sod down. We'll work with the residents on that process or that part of the project. Mark, I'm sorry, there was a question on terrain.
One of my other questions was, how were these trees rated in previous years?
We've not done a rating like this, as far as I know, this ANSI rating, a contract arborist coming in looking at these factors on any of the blue gum eucalyptus in the past. This was a more thorough inspection, evaluation of these trees than I think we've done in the past. Now, let me maybe qualify that just a little bit. Arborists certainly have looked at those trees in the past. Every time they're trimmed, they're looked at for problems. You've all read in the paper the conchs or other issues that might be there. I'm not saying they've never been looked at, but this kind of an ANSI rating, risk assessment rating, I don't think's ever been done.
How old is this ANSI process?
I was just going to say it's...
ANSI process is very new. I'm going to say several months.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, very...
Although it's
the
new,
industry's
it's been adopted as an industry standard.
It has been.
Okay.
It's the industry's way of trying to put some kind of a numerical number
Objective.
to risk factor,
Yeah.
exactly, rather than this tree looks iffy.
Was that all your questions, Mark?
It is. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have other comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thanks for listening to what I have to say here. My name is Dave Hayes. I'm a 61-year resident of Newport Beach. I live at 2312 Fairhill Drive. It's about 2 blocks north of Holiday Road, near Tustin and 23rd Streets. My mother taught at Woodland School, retired there, taught 25 years. It's in the neighborhood here, only a couple blocks from where these trees are located. I have 5 eucalyptus trees in my backyard that I planted with my father and the next-door neighbor in 1964. They're 47 years old. They're fine. I'm not worried about them, and everything's cool. This tragedy that occurred September 15th, that's basically why we're all here, is something has happened. Everything would have been fine had this not happened. It's still unclear as to what this cause is. I've read every bit of publication I can find on this, from the LA Times, the Daily Pilot, Register. The city manager has been great. Dave Kiff has been great trying to keep us informed on this. I was interviewed by NBC, ABC, Fox, the Daily Pilot, the Register, and the LA Times when this all happened. So shortly after, when the trees were taken down, I tried to stop it on Irvine Boulevard. We've had no reports from the 137 trees that have been taken down as to what really caused these things. Once they were cut, and your arborist can probably attest to this, why didn't we here look at the stumps, analyze these trees, and go, yes, this really did need to happen? We don't have that information. We still don't, as far as I know. Costa Mesa, the next-door neighbor, has the same situation. These trees are just as old as the ones we've got here in Newport. These trees were 75, 80 years old. We can all look at the pictures of the mesa there. We know what the heritage is. Costa Mesa is not doing anything. The Register reported on November 3rd of a 2008 study in the United States, the entire United States, that says from 1995 to 2007, a 12-year period, there were 407 people killed, fatalities in the United States. That equates to a probability of being killed half what you would be, what would be if you were struck by lightning. So you have twice the probability of being struck by lightning as you do a tree. We are all sympathetic to the plight of city management and everyone involved here when it comes to the threat of litigation. We, at this point, I don't believe, have any litigation that I know of. Let's hope that this Mr. Chung, who's Henry Miller's father, is in Korea, and I hope that maybe the Korean mentality here might be a little bit different than ours, and maybe we'll be all right. What we need here, I think, we've had one arborist make judgment on all of this. He's also making judgment on 12 trees on the top of my street, Fair Hill, and 100 more trees on the Castaways Trail. Mr. Jensen, R. Dan Jensen, is a registered arborist. This is important, registered. There's a certain level of arborists here. I believe what we need is from the Association of, or the American Society of Consulting Arborists, we need to have a registered consulting arborist or team of arborists look at these trees and go from there. They're more qualified, they're more educated, it's a higher level. More municipalities, I believe, consult these guys than any other kind of arborist. There's also another system here. I just talked with a consulting arborist called the sonic tomography that no one has yet mentioned, that may be advantageous to us. It just seems that this is kind of a knee-jerk reaction here. We've taken out 137 trees, and we're considering, another 140 trees that are our heritage here. And I'd like to just say that, this is a pretty important endeavor here that we're looking at. Thank you very much.
Other comments?
I have a question on that. Did we took out a lot of eucalyptus sage along 4th Avenue. Did we see evidence that was, after we cut them down, that it was a good thing we did?
We did, both on 4th and Irvine Avenue. There was, on 4th, noticeably removing the stumps in several cases. We noticed possibly areas that the trees could have been an issue. I think one of the things we always talk about September 15th, and that was certainly a tragic day. But a week later, when Mr. Jensen was out evaluating the trees on 4th Avenue, I believe it was on the 21st, he rated a tree at the corner of 4th and Goldenrod a 9, and the next day that tree failed. And I believe it crushed 2 cars and damaged a home. So it wasn't just the one tree. We had a second failure within approximately a week. So Though I respect the comment that you're more likely to get hit by lightning, there's obviously an issue with the blue gum eucalyptus, and that's why the recommendation is what it is.
Other public comment?
Mayor Henn and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosher. I just want to make 3 observations. First, my reading of your council's policy G1 is if a tree is an imminent hazard, the city manager already has the authority to handle that situation, and I would respect his decision. Observation 2 is the question of these 18 particular trees has been put to you here. I was at the November 1st Parks, Beaches, and Recreation meeting held here also. Something I notice is noticeably absent. The decision makers have never been shown a photo of what it is they're making a decision about. And as some of the residents who came to the November 1st meeting pointed out, at least to the man in the street, the situation on Holiday Road seems extremely different than it was on the median of Irvine Avenue or on 4th Avenue in Corona Del Mar. In those other 2 cases, the trees were tightly encroached by road improvements. These trees on Holiday Road are so far back in the people's yards you wouldn't even know that they were city trees unless you were told that. They're actually in the front lawns of these homeowners' houses. And maybe their front lawns are not supposed to be out so far, but the situation is completely different. The trees are not tightly constrained like that. And the third point is the danger of fall. I think we're talking about a tree falling over in a big windstorm. These are very tall trees that look like the city has not trimmed them in many, many years. And as a physicist, which is my background, I just can't believe that some of the alternatives that the neighbors thought would be preferable to them, such as cutting back the canopy, would not change the wind load and change the hazard of the situation. So I think it's a different situation, and there are maybe alternatives. As Mr. Harmon says, it may not look as pretty to cut back the tops, but if the residents of that area would prefer that look, it would seem to me to be a reasonable alternative. Thank you.
Mark, will you speak to the consideration of alternatives here?
I will. I'd like to make a clarification, though, because I don't want to leave something said wrong. I believe the gentleman speaking just said that those trees haven't been pruned in many years. I've got records in my hand starting in 1999, at least this page. Every year, those trees on Holiday Road have been trimmed. The canopies have been trimmed, and we trim them extensively for that purpose, because otherwise they'd have an extremely large canopy, and wind would be a factor in the failure of those trees. So I don't want it said that we don't trim them and we don't reduce the size of the canopy as a mitigation effort. And that's one of the primary things that we can do. Some of the other things, I'll let Dan talk about the resistograph. That's a little bit technical there. But I did check with Mr. Jensen, and with another comment was that only one arborist has looked at that. We have had 2 in-house arborists work with Mr. Jensen on this evaluation process. The certified arborists state that there really isn't a staking method that we could use on these large of trees that would in any way reduce the failure. There just isn't. There just isn't something there that's possible for that. There was mention of a resistograph. It's the boring tool that will attempt to determine rot or decay within the inside of a tree. And Dan, why don't you touch on that?
Well, there was something called sonic tomography as well. So if you can comment on that.
Dan, why don't you take that one too, because that's...
I'll start off with the sonic tomography. It is a newer way of determining the decay within a tree. It is a tool that you can use. We don't use that tool or have used that. We do have a resistograph, which is another tool that bores into the tree and can subject it to fungal disease getting into the trunk of the tree. Myself as an arborist for 20 years, and John Conway, who is our urban forester, have looked at these trees extensively in the past, and our mitigation measures have been to prune them annually to reduce the weight and the overall structure of these trees. I would say a couple other things is that I heard that it's not similar situation to other trees that we've looked at, Irvine Avenue and Castaways. This was a hedgerow of trees that was planted to protect crops possibly 80 years ago. Several trees have been removed, but a lot of these trees, or some of these trees are 2-3 feet on center. We're talking about a eucalyptus globulus, a blue gum eucalyptus that was planted for a purpose, to protect crops. A tree that ultimately, if it was left alone in a park by itself, could get 175 feet tall by 50 to 100 feet wide. That's what it wants to do. Its roots will also go out that far, 50 to 100 feet. And they're planted in an area that there's been development around. Grades have changed. They're old trees, and trees that have been placed under stress for many years, which a lot of our urban forest trees have been placed under stress due to the conditions that we've talked here. Roadway improvements, development around them, be it houses, walkways, planters that have been built around them. Pruning practices to keep them as safe as possible, to keep them away from pedestrians and cars and vehicles. All those stresses add up, as it does on any living organisms over a period of time. And they react to those stresses by not growing as vigorously, by being subjected to diseases and insects because they're in a stressed situation. And we combat that by heavily pruning them, by sometimes injecting these trees, which we have on Holiday Road specifically because of insects that have invaded them and drop a honeydew onto cars and landscapes and other things. So trees have a useful life in any city. We're not the only city going through this. A lot of the Southern California cities that are in our age range, 100 years, give or take a few years, have a lot of trees that we have nursed along over the years and tried to protect and try to keep intact. But there's a point in any living organism's life where it's reached its useful life and it has become hazardous. And we feel, myself as one of the staff arborists, John Conway, and then our consulting arborist that has come in and looked at these trees, that they're in that range right now. The forest, and I'm probably going too long, but I haven't been able to speak to this issue. The forest is a living thing that needs to be renewed, especially in urban forest. It's not like the San Bernardino forest or the Amazon forest, for that matter, that is also subject to different things. If you go up in the San Bernardinos now, they've been being attacked by many beetles, and a lot of pine trees have died. And that is specifically related to drought, as well as atmospheric conditions such as smog and other things that stress out these trees. When a tree becomes stressed, it sends off, for lack of a better term, a hormone, and insects and diseases are attracted to that. And in this case, and in a lot of cases in the city, we have trees that are placed in stressful situations. And these trees are some of those that are in our city. And in rebirthing the forest, and I'm a scientist. My degree is in horticulture, and I believe in the science of these trees, and I know the science as far as plant physiology, plant pathology. I've studied some of those things. And so in knowing that, and knowing that the pressures that have been placed on these trees for so many years adds up. I'm not discounting the beauty of these trees. As I said, I'm a horticulturalist. I don't take it lightly in removing any trees. But these trees and other trees that we'll be looking at in the future are in a situation now where it's time to rebirth them so your grandchildren and preceding generations can enjoy the same canopy that we're enjoying right now, instead of having a lot of trees that were planted at the same time fail and/or be removed and end up with a smaller forest. But if we systematically go through and start renewing some of these trees, we can all enjoy the same forest that we have now.
Okay. Do we have any other public comment on this item?
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Jenna Keith Burney. I live at 2228 Holiday Road. And while I respect Mr. Jensen's opinion, and obviously, like, he's an expert in the subject, I'm troubled by the apparent lack of thorough inspection up to this date. If our trees are as diseased as he claims they are, I would hope that that would have come to light in the yearly prunings that happened. I feel like this is all a reaction to a very tragic event, and that the city's rushing to judgment. We were noticed on Thursday for the meeting today. Why couldn't someone have knocked on our door and walked us through and said, this tree right here, this is the problem? That's all we're asking for. It seems like you're just rushing to take these trees out. These trees have taken, 100 years or more to grow? I mean, they're huge. I can't even fit my arms around any of the 5 trees that are essentially in my front yard. And you're going to erase 100 years of history in one afternoon. I just ask you to please take your time. There's a majority of the houses on Holiday Road. There's 6 of them that have these trees. 3 of us are here tonight. We're here to say, please don't do this. Like, you're our voice. Please represent our opinion. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Dennis Holland. I live at 2200 Holiday Road. I was on Irvine Avenue and saw the stump of the tree that fell over and killed that lady. I saw the roots were cut off. I saw it was full of rot from overwatering. And I don't see that on Holiday Road. Those trees are well protected. They're now overwatered. And I'd still like to see some kind of test on the roots, so, you know, and take our time and get some other opinions. Thank you.
Other comment?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Greg Crandall. I live at 2212 Holiday Road. I did participate in the PBR hearing earlier in the month, and got the notice, you know, short term, and got in here and just came in here to learn, which is what this process has been about for everybody. And it did seem like this was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to some other unfortunate situations that happened in the city. I will say that, I mean, there's a tree in my front yard that I've had or lived there for 11, 12 years, and it's noticeably leaning and has been for the last 11, 12 years. I've often looked at it and went, well, is that going to fall or is it not? But nobody's ever knocked on my door. It's been trimmed quite regularly, I might add. The city takes great care of the trees. They're trimmed once, maybe twice a year. They've had treatments done, has been noted. So I do thank the city for taking good care of those trees. But it's interesting that, you know, if there's trees in our city that, you know, there's 36,000 trees, are they being looked at? I mean, and maybe this is a process that is really kicking in now, and we're learning more and being more on top of it. But I guess we'll all learn that together. Basically, just wanted to, you know, voice my opinion for not having any knee-jerk reactions, and you know, I appreciate the professional opinions we've had. Maybe those are adequate. Maybe we need additional. I'm not an expert in that, but learning about it, and I guess we all are. Thank you for your time.
Other comment? Okay, I'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to council for further discussion and action. Councilmember Curry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a big tree fan. Newport Beach has been designated as a tree city now for several consecutive years. In fact, we've received special designation because of the urban forest here in our city. And in fact, I understand from our staff that The book value on the city's trees is something in excess of $80 million, all told, if you were to add the value of those trees up. So first of all, any tree we take down, I'm in full support of replacing. I don't think we need to talk about not replacing our trees or this resource in our city. I'm also a big eucalyptus tree fan. I don't care that they come from Australia. I think they're part of the Southern California landscape, and I think they do a great job in defining our region. But with that said, let me just say it is absolutely a fool's game to try and predict what's going to happen under certain weather conditions. One statistic I remember very carefully from last year is that we had 100 trees go down in a winter storm in one night. And those were randomly across the city, and you can't really predict when those events are going to happen. So as we think about what to do here, it seems to me that the only real imperative that we should be focused on is what is in the best interest of public safety. So I just want to be sure one more time that is your professional opinion that the interests of public safety are best served by taking these trees down at this point in time.
It is. The rating of the arborist in looking at these trees, evaluating these trees, is a solid recommendation that for public safety property, they be removed.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
I hate these. I really do, because I have trees that I love. I mean, I'd be sick if they were taken down. And I want to support the homeowners. I think that to have 5 huge trees, and have them gone, you're going to feel naked. But it's very hard to say we can just ignore what our experts are telling us, which is that it is a safety issue. And it's not just a matter of 6 homeowners, but of the people driving by there every day and people coming to visit and that sort of thing. So I think it's if those are trees that are problems, and if we have seen, as you say, that when we did it on 4th Street, we did see problems, that would be convincing to me. If we saw on 4th Street we cut down a whole bunch of trees and just everything looked fine, that would give me great pause. But you have said that we did see issues of what, root damage and that sort of thing?
Yeah, when the arborist looked at these trees and the tree that fell on 4th and Goldenrod that day, there were issues enough in his evaluation that clearly, without hesitation, he made the recommendation to the city that these trees be removed.
Right, but after we removed them, did we look at them and say, oh, isn't this good that we removed this one?
Individually, I don't know what his ratings were. His findings were that the trees were rightfully removed, but I don't know, I can't give you addresses.
So, I mean, we did do a post-removal evaluation of some sort.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Daigle?
Yes, safety is paramount, and Mark's recommendation is a solid recommendation. In no way is it wishy-washy. So we need to listen to the safety professionals. I think the lesson of New Orleans with the levees was safety people said you got a problem, and that went ignored. So we need to, I believe, or I'll certainly be supporting the staff's recommendation. And I think that there's additional issues that we can be looking at in the months ahead, and that is, where is our urban forest going? What efforts are going to be made to assess the health of the forest, to evaluate it, to look at where removal and renewal is appropriate. And we need to look at that. We have an urban forester. We have people on contract, and we need to utilize those resources. And so I support the staff's recommendation, and I look forward to additional issues being addressed as we move forward. So thank you.
Okay. I guess, whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Rush?
I feel compelled to make a comment because this is my district. And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Gardner. I hate this. I grew up on the Irvine Ranch, and my philosophy was the perfume of California was eucalyptus. And to me, they've been one of my favorite trees. I don't know, I mean, it's obviously a very emotional issue, and I don't know how I, anyway, can allow emotion to trump experts that tell me that there's a public safety issue. And I don't see how I can do otherwise. I have heard anecdotal stories, and I don't know them to be factual, but this scenario is not just happening on Holiday Road. It's happening in other parts of the town as well, and in particular Corona del Mar. And I've been told that the residents in Corona del Mar have been very upset with their trees coming out, many of them, and then participating in the discussions of what kind of appropriate trees to replace them with has turned those individuals around, and they've been much more comfortable with that decision. And so I would hope that that would be the case here. I would hope that the staff would work very closely on a one-on-one basis with the residents in discussing the type of appropriate trees that we would see that would become beneficial public trees, and that we could look at moving forward with those, not on a when we get around to it basis, but on a very high priority basis.
Councilmember Selich.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't ignore the safety issue here either. However, I would suggest that when these 18 trees are taken down, that each stump be analyzed and verified that, in fact, the system is accurate in making the predictions that it's making, that we not just have a generalized statement from the arborist saying that his findings were confirmed, that we actually have some post-mortem, if you will, inspection of these trees to make sure that we're on the right track here.
Okay, I would agree that some more specific follow-up would be good, although it's not my expectation that every tree that's would be taken down would show evidence of problems, because in some cases, my understanding is that an adjacent tree needs to come down because of the potential for being weakened by a tree next to it that might have been diseased or whatever. So it would not be my expectation that all of the trees would have a problem in any event.
Well, we should still see what the condition of each tree is.
Yeah, I agree. And I do want to make one thing clear. I'm not motivated here by concerns for liability and lawsuits here. I'm motivated by concern for safety. And I don't know how I can avoid a real feeling of negligence to allow trees to remain in the face of expert confirmation and recommendation that they should come down. I don't know, I can't, I would have a great deal of trouble living with myself making the decision to keep those trees up in the face of this information and, God forbid, someone else be injured. I don't know how I could live with myself. So I too share the concern and hate the idea that these beautiful trees need to come down, but I don't see how there's any choice in the matter. So with that, I do believe we need a motion.
I'll move the action.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Curry. Please vote.
The motion carries unanimously.
I guess I'd have one further comment here. I do presume that the city will be working with the residents to replace these trees, that we're not going to be, that we will be seeking to replace these trees with as large and mature new trees as we can justify, I guess. I mean, do you...
Yes, that's so, although remember There is a reason that the eucalyptus are a problem in an urban environment, and that's because of their height. You're not going to see something come back that's going to get to that height. It's going to be an appropriate street tree, and as we've talked about, the science of street trees has advanced significantly over the past 10 to 12 years, and we have great selections that I think people like and are much safer than a tree like this.
But my point is, I would hate that there would be little twigs,
I see. Yeah,
The size
I
of
think
the
our
planting.
focus has been
Talking
on the
about-
36 or the 48s.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about maximum-sized trees that we can justify here within reason. I mean, it's just for purposes of the aesthetics. So, okay. On to the next item. Thank you, Mark. Which is an update on parking permit fees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is your last item of the evening. This is something that the Finance Committee has seen. I'm going to turn that over to Tracy as she settled in about updating our parking permit fees.
Thank you, Dave, Mayor and Council. I don't have a presentation prepared. You have the parking permit program report in front of you. Like Dave said, we did go to the Finance Committee, and they recommended we bring this back to full council for review and comment. The program itself hasn't been looked at in almost 20 years. How lucky am I to pair it with the master fee schedule for you all, so I'm sorry about that. But it is just something I'd like to get feedback from the full council. We did a comparable list of our neighboring cities, and then we did the CPI inflators, as the report suggests. And I think the materials presented confirm that a rate increase would keep us at market rate, lower than some, but at others. And then we did take the Finance Committee's recommendation that we look into a veteran discount. Our comparable cities do not offer that. I also went back down to San Diego County, obviously a big military city, and I couldn't find any veterans discounts there either. So the state of California was the only example I was able to find, and I detailed that in the report. But it does seem like a genuine interest of this council and the community. So in working with the city manager, we have come back with a recommendation for council to consider a 25% discount for the veterans. We would confirm valid ID. Retired and active military have valid ID, like a driver's license. So if this council sees fit, or I'm open to any discussion on any of the other recommendations in our report.
I just had a question about why we offer seniors half price. And I understand why theaters offer lower price, because seniors come at those hours when others don't come, like the early birds and all that. But as a senior myself, I mean, I don't know why my car doesn't takes up the same space at the same time, probably. So is that just something that we've always done, or?
That I can research. It is something that we've always offered, but we never offered it for the annual permits or the overnight permits. So we are recommending that we just offer that senior discount across the board. And then obviously the other recommendation that I like is significantly reducing the master permit program to be more comparable to an annual blue pole permit, to hopefully encourage more people to purchase the master permit.
Okay, well, it just
Do we
don't
have-
quite understand the rationale for it.
Should we bring Evelyn
Well,
back?
You have the opportunity to recommend changing that here this evening if you feel
All
like it.
discussion is welcome.
Well, as I say, I'm a senior, so it's not like I'm being ageist.
Well, I think the thought is there could be income-constrained individuals and that they might warrant these special protections. I think that's generally
Okay,
why.
all right,
yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine then.
That's what I meant to say.
There are seniors who are on fixed incomes, and so that makes sense.
And those quarters are heavy, too.
Do we have any other? Councilmember Hill.
I suppose
Are you a senior?
I need to recuse myself from the discussion.
Anybody over 65 cannot vote on it.
So, if the media will not report that I'm in violation of the FPPC, I would like to make a couple of comments. I will refrain from commenting on the senior aspect.
I do not have any problem with the city charging a fee for service. I think that's appropriate. And I guess I would cap that fee at market, what I would define as market rate. I mean, if the city is inefficient and you know, needs to spend $1,000 worth of time to do what every other city does for $500, then I don't think it's appropriate to charge $1,000. But fee for service, if it costs $500 and that's market, then I think that's very appropriate. I would feel very comfortable if you were coming to us to say, gee, the fees haven't been raised in 20 years, which that doesn't hold a lot of water with me anyway. But if you said, and we need to add blue meters to the city streets, and so we're going to raise the fee. We don't feel too bad about raising it because it hasn't been raised for a long time, but I'm going to add additional value as a result of that fee. Or we need to create a new parking lot in this particular area, and so there's a lot of need for residential parking or business parking in that area, and so we're going to raise the fee and we're going to build a new parking lot. Or we're going to, you know, show me where you're adding value because you're raising the fee. To raise a fee for the purpose of raising a fee violates, in my sense, the principle that what this city is doing so well right now is teaching its public that we're learning to live within our budget. Our community is living within their budget. They're not necessarily getting increases in anything. Why do we deserve to increase something when we're not adding additional value as a result of that? And that's my problem with raising the parking fees.
Okay. Other comment? Seeing none, do we have comment from the public on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council.
Well, just kind of address your issue, Rush, because I agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, we shouldn't just raise fees to raise fees, but the cost of providing services that these fees, you know, support are all going up too. I mean, things in 20 years, I don't know, you know, everything costs more today than it did 20 years ago. And, you know, to pay his salary and her salary and, you know, put the
Council
lights on.
stipends?
Council stipends went up, you know, electricity costs.
I beg your pardon. Mine went down in half, and we've outsourced the parking thing. We've increased ticket revenue 400%, and we've increased other revenue 33%. So I'm afraid I don't buy your argument.
Well, I don't vouch for those figures or not. I don't have those at my fingertips like you do, but I know that things do cost more. And if we don't, just like with the mooring permits and things like that, if we don't keep up with these fees, I mean, yeah, then it looks ridiculous. 20 years later, you know, you're doubling a fee. Well, yeah, it's a 100% increase, but it hasn't been changed in 20 years. So, you know, it's our bad, I think, that we're not more on top of this. I think he talked about it a little earlier that we're doing a better job of it, and it's, you know, government costs money. Good government and services and having a city we can be proud of costs money. And if you don't kind of keep the revenues in line, I'm not saying to jack them up so high. I mean, we can charge a lot more if we wanted to. I mean, we can raise our meter rates and things like that, and that wouldn't be fair. But I think it is fair to at least reassess from time to time what the fees are and charge an appropriate fee and a fair fee and a fee that will keep city government running in an efficient and in the manner that the residents want us to. So I will support, or I'll even make the motion that we.
I was hoping you would.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Rush, your light is on.
I can count the votes pretty easily.
All right, please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I need to read the title for the three resolutions. Resolution number 2011-109, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach reestablishing an annual parking permit system for use in certain city parking lots and off-street parking meter zones and rescinding resolution number 95-133, Resolution number 2011-110, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach reestablishing a master parking permit system and rescinding resolution number 95-134, and resolution number 2011-111, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach reestablishing an overnight parking permit system for the use of parking spaces in the Balboa Municipal Lot, and rescinding resolution number 95-135. With that, with council members Hill and Daigle voting no, the motion carries.
Thank you. On to motions for reconsideration.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Do we have any motions for reconsideration? Seeing none. We do have two memoriams to close the meeting with tonight, although they were not on the published agenda. Pardon? Yeah. So, would you prefer to read this? I will read these two, and then we'll close the meeting. The first is for Teresa McIntosh. Teresa Ibarra McIntosh, co-publisher of Boating World Magazine, Sea Magazine, The Log Newspaper, and editor and publisher magazine, and co-producer of the Newport Boat Show and the Lido Yacht Expo, died October 11th at her home in Newport Beach. Teresa was born and raised in Chino. She attended Pasadena City College, Long Beach State University, and earned a degree from the University of California, San Diego. She led a full and fascinating life that included teaching on a Hopi Indian reservation, marching with Cesar Chavez, and enjoying a successful career that crossed into a number of industries. Teresa was widely recognized for her work in publishing and in co-producing our two local boat shows. Teresa was married for 26 years to Duncan McIntosh, who also happened to be her business partner of 32 years. She is survived by her husband, Duncan, two sisters and two brothers, Duncan's children, Scott McIntosh, Michelle Tollefson, and Steve Banta, and a large extended family. The next memoriam is to Doreen DeMond Marshall. Former Newport Beach Mayor Doreen DeMond Marshall passed away on November 9th. A Los Angeles native, Doreen graduated Phi Beta Kappa from UCLA and did postgraduate work at Columbia University. After returning to Southern California, she met and married Robert Marshall. The Marshalls eventually moved to Newport Beach and became longtime residents of Lido Isle. Doreen was an active member of several civic and charitable organizations. She served on the Newport Beach City Council from 1962 to 1970 and served as mayor from 1968 to 1970. She was a recipient of the Newport Beach Citizen of the Year Award and served on the board of directors of the Pacific Chorale. Her many interests included sailing and swimming in the bay, music, and traveling. Doreen is survived by her brother, Frank DeMond, and his wife, Christy, her sister, Joan DeMond, nieces, nephews, and extended family and friends. There will be no services, and donations can be made in her memory to the Orange County Community Foundation, Stanford University Graduate School of Business, or to the Pacific Chorale. And with that,